Chapter 167, Life in Doubt 3. Chapter 167, Life in Doubt. As for the Thunder Essence Blade, I'm not very familiar with it. On the contrary, I can't focus it on one point. He had originally intended to use the Thunder Essence Blade, but after taking a closer look and making a judgment, he realized that using the Thunder Essence Blade was actually not good. It has little to do with weapons, moves, or martial techniques. The main test is the degree of concentration of Yuan Qi and the degree of control of willpower. This Su Yu had experience. Previously, in order to learn the Thunder Origin Saber, he had specially activated the tearing skill, trying out the method of gathering Yuan Qi bit by bit. Now that he was at the 9th level of the Yuan opening realm, he could relate to the Yuan Qi of the outside world. He was even more familiar with the control of Yuan Qi. Using my fist. No, I can use my fingers. If I condense a little, it will be easier to control my fingers. Su Yu made a judgment. Although he was not too sure, he still decided that he would not use weapons or martial techniques later. He would just use Yuan Qi to infuse his fingers and strike with all his strength. Perhaps he could score even higher. After waiting for a while, Su Yu heard his exam number. Student 3-015. Su Yu walked out and attracted the attention of many people. This fellow had previously caused a commotion outside, and almost everyone present knew him. When they saw Su Yu walk out, many people were curious. How much could he score? Even if he's at the 9th level of Kaiyuan realm, he might not be able to score well. He might even score 100 points. Someone said in a low voice, filled with jealousy. Even if the score of 100 points was higher than his, it was still very embarrassing in his eyes. The top student of Zhanjiang College had scored 100 points. Look at others, they could even score higher at the 7th or 8th level of Kaiyuan realm. Su Yu ignored them. Yuan Qi gathered on his right index finger, and his willpower also gathered on his index finger. Actually, he had yet to control his willpower. However, at his current stage, the main thing was focus, just like subduing a divine text. Concentration was actually the accumulation of willpower. His index finger gently poked at the puppet. Many people were surprised when they saw this. This fellow, doesn't he want to score high? The other party had already used all his strength to chop. What did you mean by gently extending a finger? Why don't you just stick out your middle finger? They could not understand it. Even Wulan could not understand it, but the few of them who were in the air could see it clearly. When Director Sun saw this, he smiled. His lips trembled as he said, "Interesting. This little fellow is a smart person. I don't think anyone has taught him before, right? I don't know. Lu Wenyan probably doesn't care about this. Even if there is someone to teach him, it is only a small trick. The key is that this little fellow is only at the 9th level of the Yuan opening realm. His control of Yuan Qi is not weak. He also has willpower, very weak, but his concentration is very high." As they discussed, beside the puppet, the leader of the Great Xia War Academy transmitted his voice, "A bunch of idiots. Can we see a little more? This little fellow isn't strong like this. Yuan Qi is gathered in his index finger, and his finger is about to explode. His expression doesn't change, and he doesn't show any signs of pain. This is the real key, tenacity. This kind of student should go to War Academy, not to Civilization Academy and be buried in a mountain of books." He really valued Su Yu at this moment. The commander of the Demon Suppression Army was not here, or else he would really have dragged Su Yu to the army. This kind of student was too suitable for the development of the army. Although they were scolded, Director Sun and the others were not angry. At this moment, they suddenly realized one thing. This was Kaiyuan. They had all soared into the air. Their bodies had long been incomparably powerful, so they had forgotten all this. The Yuan opening realm's body was too weak. The gathering of Yuan Qi was like a knife cutting. One had to know that only yellow-grade weapons could withstand the gathering of Yuan Qi. Su Yu had actually used his finger. Although this could increase the gathering of Yuan Qi, the pain he endured was 10 to 100 times that of Wu Lan and the others. This little fellow really did not care about his life for the sake of getting high marks. With this finger, his index finger might not be able to recover for 7 to 8 days. His 10 fingers were connected to his heart. He knew the pain within. These people's discussions were carried out through voice transmission. Su Yu and company knew nothing about it. It was painful. Su Yu knew that his body knew, but he had experience. The last time, in order to observe the condensation of Yuan Qi, his right hand had swollen for several days. That was during normal times. Now that they were taking the exam, only those with high scores could get back 20 merit points. Spending a few hundred yuan to buy some ointment and apply it would do. Su Yu had a clear judgment as to which was more important, a few hundred yuan or 20 merit points. If he did not perform during the exam, could it be that he had to wait for the next time? A hissing sound could be heard. His index finger hit the puppet. The sound was not loud, but Su Yu felt resistance. His index finger was getting more and more painful. Su Yu held on for quite a while until his finger could not take it anymore. Only then did Su Yu retract his finger. It was as calm as the wind. There was not much movement, not much movement. But at this moment, when the students looked at the screen, they were a little stunned. 327 points. Wu Lan's face was blank, and she couldn't help but say, "How is it possible, How could Su Yu score so high? So what if he was at the 9th level of Kaiyuan realm?" There were many people who couldn't score 200 points in the 9th level of Kaiyuan realm. It wasn't as if one could score high just because one's cultivation realm was high. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few people in the Institute of Civilization. Zhou Tianqi was also stunned. 327 points, his willpower isn't strong. How could it be? Director Sun revealed a smile, and the other examiners nodded slightly as well. It wasn't unexpected. A person who was ruthless to himself would always have some benefits. This little fellow didn't lose a finger, right? Seeing that Wu Lan and the others didn't dare to believe it, Director Sun said indifferently, "Student Wu Lan, you can try using your finger. You might get 350 points." When Wu Lan heard this, she said hurriedly, "Then can I take the test again?" Chapter 168, Doubting Life 4. Chapter 168 Doubting Life 4. Director Sun's heart was tired. "Didn't your family teach you? What exactly did your family teach you?" Cough cough. After a light cough, Director Sun said indifferently, "Next time then. There's only one chance." "Oh right, don't try it recklessly." After breaking Wu Lan's finger, he was also somewhat unable to bear it. A fine of 10 million was nothing, but to break the finger of this daughter of the Wu family so easily, they really had to bear the pressure. Who asked them to come up with such random ideas for the exam? Since the Wu family did not teach her, it was obvious that they did not want her to get hurt. After all, it did not mean much. Other than getting a few more points during the exam, their families did not lack powerful weapons at other times. Wu Lan was a little unwilling. Su Yu had scored 327 points, and suddenly he had scored 527 points. The gap between them had become smaller. She was really unhappy. She had wanted to see Su Yu's dark face with a heavy expression. But now, that guy was very happy. At this moment, he looked at her with a wild smile. If Su Yu knew, he would probably feel very innocent. He just smiled and scored a high score. He was a little happy. So what if he smiled? How could he be so wild? He did not know that if he was expressionless now, Wu Lan would probably scold him too. When a woman was angry, she would have a different understanding. 595,527, the gap was 68 points. Su Yu closed the distance in an instant. Wu Lan was so angry that she was about to cry. She wanted to be 150 points higher than Su Yu this time, but she did not expect that the gap would be reduced by a lot. Wu Lan was angry. Su Yu saw it. He was a little confused. Why did he feel like he was about to cry? This fool would not really cry, right? I didn't provoke you. I only wanted to get 20 achievement points back. Are you going to eat at your place? Ridiculous. Su Yu muttered in his heart. He couldn't be bothered with it. Women were all obstacles. His teacher's words were once again verified. It's too strange, I'm not familiar with you at all. You did well in the examination. At this moment, Division Head Sun also spoke up. He smiled and said, for the next examination, those who haven't come into contact with the text of will, divine inscriptions, or the original 10,000 tribe cultivation technique, you don't have to take the examination anymore. Otherwise, you might hurt yourself. Obviously, the next assessment was not suitable for some ordinary students. Their assessment might end here. If their realms were not high and their results in the culture class were not good, the civilized university had already closed the entrance to them. Su Yu did not mind. He thought for a moment, walked to Wu Lan's side, and whispered, "Silly, how many additional merit points have you accumulated?" Wu Lan looked at him angrily and did not say a word. Forget it, I don't suspect anything. After all, other than the myriad clan language, I feel that you don't know anything else. It's impossible for you to go on a mission. Nonsense, you don't. Wu Lan was furious. I have accumulated merit points. Previously, when I was in the academy, I also helped my teacher to translate the myriad clan language. Although it was only to assist, I have accumulated 6 merit points. Su Yu was dumbstruck. There was such a method. Was the Great Xia Academy really that awesome? They actually allowed the students from the Intermediate Academy to translate the myriad clan language. Was this for real? He really couldn't hold it in any longer and whispered, "They used the back door. Otherwise, why would they need you to translate? This is too fake. You're the one who used the back door." Wu Lan said angrily, "The last time, we seized a large amount of the myriad clan language originals. The strong weren't willing to waste God for these low-level cultivation techniques. The other teachers couldn't handle it. US students at the nurturing stage went over to help with the translation. How could this be considered as using the back door?" She was furious. She said angrily, "Even the civilized academy needs students in the nurturing stage to help with the translation. All of them are counted as merit points. Isn't that how civilized teachers get merit points?" "Oh right, why do you have merit points?" She should be wondering if Su Yu had used a backdoor. Where did Su Yu get merit points? She was also there during the morning assessment and forgot that Su Yu had quite a lot of merit points. He had accumulated 10 merit points. Yes, he had accumulated 10 merit points. Wu Lan's mind collapsed. How could he have so many merit points? She had forgotten that Su Yu had no merit points. Could it be that Bai Feng had used a backdoor for him? When Su Yu heard this, he understood a little. It seemed that this was how civilized masters earned merit points before they could soar into the sky. On the other hand, he was actually walking the path of a warrior. He was the true outlier among civilized masters. You only have 6 points, then you only have 655 points, and I have 627 points. Su Yu was very satisfied. The gap was very small, only 28 points. He was still worried that he wouldn't be able to catch up. It seemed like there was a high chance. Oh right, how many points does a god text cost to master? Wu Lan ignored him. She was really angry now. 28 points. She was just short of 28 points. Why? She was a genius who wanted to pass the upper-tier examination. Why was it that this fellow, Nan Yuan, was able to score more than 600 points? It was even easier than in the morning. Now, he could even enter the upper-tier examination. In the morning, he said that he didn't rely on luck but on strength. He was stronger. In the morning, he didn't take it seriously. Now, she wasn't convinced. After being angry for a while, Wulan couldn't hold it in anymore. She said angrily, "You, really mastered divine inscriptions?" "I can't tell you. It's a secret." "What's so great about it?" "I can do it too." Wulan was angry. It was not like she did not know how to do it. Who cared? What's the use of mastering the divine prose? "I mastered it a few years ago." Su Yu ignored her. Most of the fool's information had been obtained. There was no need to waste time on her. The difference was 28 points. She had to think of a way to smooth it out. It would be a pity to give the first place to this fool. Clearly, she did not care about the merit rewards. Beside her, Director Sun said, "The rest of you, follow me and continue with the assessment." "Oh right. Don't copy Su Yu, forget it, it's useless even if you learn. You guys won't be able to do it." He originally wanted to say a few words not to hurt himself by copying Su Yu, but when he turned around, he realized that these people would not be able to gather their Yuan Qi. They could not even gather their basic Yuan Qi if they were not at the 8th level of Kaiyuan realm, so there was no need to talk about anything else. What was the point of saying all this? It was too depressing. He had left, but the other students who had yet to take the examination had faces full of sorrow. Why was this division head son so depressing? What did he mean by he could not do it even after learning? Wasn't it just a finger poke? It was as if no one could not do it. Most of the people did not dare to try rashly, afraid that they would not do well in the examination. Some of them had no hope of passing the examination in the first place, so they might as well give it a try. There might be hope. Thus, Su Yu and the others left less than 10 minutes later, and the lowest score came out. 3 points. It was the lowest score in the entire venue. No, perhaps it was the lowest score in all the previous years, but there was actually someone who scored a single point in the realm test. Even a little kid at first level of Kaiyuan realm might score higher than him. At this moment, that student with 3 points was doubting his life. Even if he did not have any hope at first, if he really scored 3 points, he suspected that he would be beaten to death by his parents when he returned home. He scored 3 points in the Kaiyuan triple sect examination. Who would believe him if he told others? Su Yu scored 327 points, and he stabbed 109 of me to death with one finger. I don't believe it. This student's state of mind collapsed. He didn't believe it. He really didn't believe it. That fellow had only poked him once. How could there be such a huge difference between people? P.S. Don't ask him to be on the shelves. Don't say that the examination time is too long. I've only published a book for a total of 28 days. Don't keep thinking that 28 days is a long time. Isn't it normal for other people to publish a book for 28 days without a single plot passing by? Why to the ego so cruel requirements? Chapter 169, might not be your one. Chapter 169, might not be your one. The inner examination hall. There were not many students who came this time. There were not many who had come into contact with the language of will and the divine language on the southern Yuan side, and there were not many who could come into contact with the great Xia manner at this stage. Some of them might not have come into contact with it before, but they were unwilling to give up or wanted to watch the show, so they also followed. Su Yu swept his gaze over, and there were about 100 students around him. Soon, they arrived at the highest floor of the examination hall. In front of them was a sealed classroom. At this moment, there were city guards guarding the door. Director Sun looked at the two chief examiners of the Institute of Civilization. The two of them looked at each other and nodded at the same time. Soon, Researcher Huang turned around and looked at the crowd. He said seriously, "This stage mainly tests the comprehensive abilities of willpower, divine runes, and tenacity. As I said before, students who have not come into contact with these before must be careful. Divine runes are drawn and complete. Everyone's divine runes are different. Even if it's the same character, it has different characteristics. It's actually impossible to tell something from a simple test of divine runes. Both are complete divine runes. How can you tell the difference between strong and weak? Give different grades. Therefore, in the Civilized Academy's assessment, at this stage, there will be some special identification methods. Those students who outline the divine runes but do not have a complete outline will also receive a certain amount of bonus points. At the back. Some students who did not understand could not help but say, "Teacher, without a complete outline of the divine runes, there are no special characteristics. Moreover, our willpower has not materialized, so we are actually unable to display it. Whether we outline the divine runes or not, it is entirely up to us to say it. Even if we don't say it, no one will know, right? In other words, I want to lie to you that I have drawn it, but in reality, I haven't. You can't tell, right?" Researcher Huang laughed. "If you're thinking that you're lucky and that you're just making up the numbers, then I can only say that you're thinking too much. The Civilized Academy's assessment has lasted for hundreds of years. There might have been some loopholes in the early stages, but in the later stages, they would have long since made up for them one by one. The mysteriousness of civilized masters is beyond your imagination. In the examination room in front of you, there is currently a divine text that is specially used for the assessment. Everyone will go in later. Those who have read the text of will should know that there will be a certain amount of pressure. It is also the same inside. Willpower and divine text are not up to the standard. They will be intimidated very quickly and won't be able to stay any longer." As he spoke, Researcher Huang explained, "You will understand later on. After you go in, those who can't take it will come out on their own. If you can't come out, call for help from the examiners. Don't force yourself. It will hurt your sea of consciousness. You are ignorant and ignorant. It will be too late to regret later on. Those who want to enter the Institute of Civilization, I hope that they are all smart people and not idiots. If they don't even have self-awareness, then such a person is not worthy of becoming a civilized master. Therefore, the assessment carries a certain level of danger. However, we still insist on using this method to assess them." Researcher Huang said seriously, "We hope that students have courage, perseverance, and tenacity. However, we don't want students to be blindly arrogant and have no clear understanding of themselves. Such students should not go to the institute to waste resources." Su Yu raised his hand and waited for the examiner to signal him. He hurriedly asked, "Teacher, how do we grade them?" "You'll understand once you go in yourself." Researcher Huang didn't say much. He looked at the city guards and said, "Let them enter." The students began to enter one by one. Su Yu followed them in. Inside was a large, empty room. It was very simple and crude, and there was nothing unusual about it. However, at the very front of the classroom, there was a small table. On top of it, there was something that looked like a bone book. Su Yu felt that it might be the original 10,000 clan cultivation method. At this time, there were also a few examiners who entered. Researcher Huang, the elder of Nine Heavens Academy, Director Sun, and Wu Wenhai did not come. They walked straight to the table in front. When the students entered one after another, Researcher Huang said again, "All of you wait outside the red line. Later, whoever can't hold on any longer will withdraw themselves." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yu felt a wave of willpower that was as vast as the sea. At the very least, that was how it felt to him. Researcher Huang seemed to be activating something, perhaps it was the divine text he was talking about. In the next moment, a golden light rose. Su Yu and the others could only see a ray of light in front of them. They couldn't see anything else. Students who want to take the test, walk forward. The further you walk, the higher your score will be. A hazy voice came from beside his ear. At this moment, Su Yu felt as if he had entered a dream. The surrounding students had disappeared. Su Yu opened his eyes. It was as if he had entered a different world. His surroundings were a vast expanse of whiteness. This is, created by divine runes. Su Yu was in a daze. Was this a dream or an illusion? His blood underling could also create illusions. However, Su Yu was able to distinguish whether it was real or fake. However, right now, he felt as if he was really in a different world. He felt as if he was dreaming. It was similar to the feeling he had in his dreams in the past. I can get high marks just by walking forward. Su Yu was really curious about the world of civilized masters at this time. He didn't quite understand Lu Wenyan's words in the past, but now he seemed to have some feelings. This was only an examination hall in the southern Yuan. Presumably, even if the divine runes here were powerful, they wouldn't be too powerful. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been brought to the southern Yuan region. This divine rune didn't seem to belong to that researcher. Could it have already materialized? Impossible. This thought appeared in Su Yu's mind. He had heard that to truly materialize a divine rune, one needed a very powerful realm. In the past few generations, only one person had left behind a real divine rune. Chapter 170, might not be your two. Chapter 170, might not be your two. There were a lot of messy thoughts in his mind. Su Yu quickly stopped thinking about it and just walked forward. Only by walking far could he get first place and get back the 20 merit points he had lost. Su Yu took a step. This step made Su Yu feel different. The pressure was great. There seemed to be an air wall in front of him that was stopping him from moving forward. Willpower. Su Yu muttered. In the next moment, the blood in his mind moved a little. It seemed to be a little excited as it started to vibrate in his mind. The invisible air wall in front of Su Yu seemed to have disappeared. Su Yu began to walk forward. He remembered that he was less than 50 meters away from the examiners. He would be able to cross it very quickly. I can't see in front. I won't hit the wall, will I? Su Yu's imagination ran wild. 50 meters was very close, and he would be able to walk over in no time. Just as Su Yu and the others were immersed in this simple world. The examiners stood beside the stage and looked at the students in front of them. At this moment, these students had their eyes wide open, and all sorts of expressions were on their faces as they walked around randomly. Researcher Huang swept his gaze over them and waved his hand. Numerous blood-colored imprints shot out. In an instant, a blood-colored imprint appeared above the heads of dozens of students. Bring these students away. Very quickly, more examiners entered the arena and entered the circle of students, bringing those dozens of students away. Only when they were brought out of the range of the divine runes did these people wake up with a dazed look. They looked around and were all somewhat dazed. Where were they just now? They were clearly in the same classroom. Why did they feel like the sky had suddenly changed? If you don't last for 1 minute, you won't get extra points. You can leave now. Researcher Huang's voice sounded. The examiners who had entered the venue began to expel the students. Someone hurriedly said, "Teacher, the examination isn't over yet." The examination isn't a show. Leave. Researcher Huang's tone was ice cold. If you don't get out, you will be disqualified from the examination. You will not be accepted. As soon as these words were said, the dozens of students did not dare to make a sound. They followed the examiners and left. Before they left, they looked at the students who were still left behind. They were filled with envy and jealousy. They knew that they had been eliminated in this round. All of them had 0 marks. Turning their heads once again, they saw that Su Yu and the others were actually still circling around on the spot. A few of the students walked a little further, but they didn't go far. The most eye-catching one was Wu Lan, who was the most outstanding. She was walking in front of everyone and had walked at least 10 meters. The second person wasn't Su Yu, but Zhou Tianqi. He had walked 6 to 7 meters. Su Yu felt that he had walked a long distance. In fact, he had only walked 2 to 3 meters at this time. After the students had left, researcher Huang was no longer serious. He looked at the students in the classroom and said with a smile, "These little fellows probably thought that they had lost their way. They have been walking for so long. Why haven't they seen us yet?" Director Sun also smiled and said, "I also tried it back then. In the end, I walked 5 meters and gained 50 points. My luck was not bad. At that time, I actually hadn't sketched out the divine text yet. That's normal. After all, only a minority of students have sketched out the divine text. Under normal circumstances, walking around 10 meters shouldn't be a problem." As researcher Huang spoke, he looked at Su Yu. He probably sketched it out. It might still be complete, but his willpower is too weak. The power of the divine text is too small. A complete divine text, if he really reached the recuperation stage, walking around 20 meters wouldn't be a problem. It would be difficult for him. Director Sun sighed lightly. It is a little difficult, but it should only be slightly weaker than Wu Lan. Zhou Tianqi should not be able to compete with him, and Zhou Tianqi should not have completely sketched out the divine text. He has probably laid the foundation. Although Zhou Tianqi had walked further than Su Yu, the few of them did not think highly of him. This fellow could not hold on any longer. Those present who could walk more than 5 meters were usually those who had laid the foundation for the divine text. They swept a glance over and saw that there were at most 10 people. This meant that there were at most 10 people who had laid the foundation for the southern primordial divine text this time. In the past, this examination venue might not have opened. This year, it was mainly because the Great Xia Manor had sent more people. Otherwise, it was possible that only Su Yu would come to this examination venue this year to take part in the assessment. Of course, even though Lu Yu had not laid the foundation. However, they had come into contact with each other a few times and they had already walked 2 to 3 meters. As the few civilized masters chatted, the elder from Nine Heavens Academy turned his head to look at the bone book on the table. It was shining with golden light and he said with some sadness, "What a pity." When he said this, the expressions of Director Sun and researcher Huang changed. "What's a pity?" Director Sun said in a deep voice, "No matter how much of a pity it is still better than us." Even though they didn't materialize, they still managed to preserve their names. Even though they've fallen, there are still legends that belong to them. Each of the bone books contained a piece of divine writing. This was the true tomb of a civilized master. It wasn't physical, but inherited. Their divine writing couldn't materialize and be preserved. They could only use some methods to preserve it in the bone books. In the books, their lives were recorded. Most of these half-materialized divine writings were left behind by Ling Yun and the Shanhai realm. They were also one of the treasures of the Institute of Civilization. Of course, without the real divine writings, the power of the fallen master wouldn't be too great. It would be enough to deal with 1,000 tons of stones, but it wouldn't pose any threat to the sky. Even so, Director Sun and the others' biggest wish was to leave behind a bone book in the cultivation pavilion of the Institute of Civilization. The Institute of Civilization called it, the Will of Civilization. Chapter 171, Might Not Be Your 3. Chapter 171, Might Not Be Your. While they were talking, researcher Huang did not delay any further. Soon, more than 10 students were marked with red marks. This was a student who could not take it and was about to be eliminated. If they could hold on for 1 minute, even if they did not walk a meter, they would still get 10 points. This was also a reward for these people. They were able to hold on and did not draw any divine runes. This was their ability. The number of people left behind was getting fewer and fewer. I haven't arrived yet. At this moment, Suyu was also somewhat dumbfounded. He had entered an illusion, right? Whether it was an illusion, hypnosis, or other methods, he did not care too much. The key was that he himself was real, so why was he walking around and not reaching the end? The world has been magnified. Suyu thought for a moment and suspected that it might have been magnified. The world of the divine text was too mysterious, and he did not know much. Just as he was about to walk forward, Suyu's expression changed slightly. In front of him, there was originally a vast expanse of whiteness, but now, a group of demonic beasts suddenly appeared. What's the situation? Why does it feel very similar to my dream? This is fake, it must be fake. We are still in the classroom, so it's impossible for demonic beasts to exist. Just as he was thinking, the group of demonic beasts suddenly pounced over. At this moment, the blood word in Suyu's mind suddenly jumped. In the next moment, a blood-red divine text appeared in front of Suyu. The blood underling ran out. He didn't know if the outside world could see it, but at this moment, he saw it. It was the same feeling as in a dream. Oh. Suyu was slightly startled. In the next moment, his eyes lit up. The blood underling in front of him suddenly turned into a blood-colored long saber. Suyu held the saber and slashed at the demon beast that was charging at him. Pooh! A soft sound was heard. In the next moment, the demon beast at the front was killed by him. Too weak. Suyu's eyes were strange. Compared to the savage demon beasts in the dream, the demon beasts in front of him were too weak. The demon beasts in the dream killed him like killing a chicken, but here, he killed the demon beasts like killing a chicken. They were very weak. Suyu dared to try because these demon beasts did not give him any sense of threat. There was no sense of danger like in the dream where he could be killed at any time. The blood underling transformed into a long knife and killed the demon beasts. It seemed like he wanted to suck their blood, but in the end, there was no blood at all. However, Suyu felt that he still sucked something. As for what it was, he wasn't sure. And just as he was killing the demon beast and the blood underling was absorbing something, researcher Huang was slightly shocked. The next moment, he looked at Suyu, he couldn't help but laugh. Interesting. This little fellow drew some divine runes. It probably has absorption characteristics. It just absorbed a little bit of my willpower. He had used his willpower to open the bone book. It had just been a little bit less, and the source was Suyu's side. Although it was very little and had almost no effect on him, he still felt it. Instantly, he had a guess. Suyu's divine text had a certain absorption characteristics, and his willpower had been absorbed by his divine text. As he was speaking, researcher Huang saw that Wulan seemed to be a little afraid and revealed a fearful expression. His eyes moved slightly, and in the next moment, he suddenly transmitted his voice, "It's fake. Wulan, Suyu is already in front of you. He has 30 points more than you. Do you want to take the second place? Are you embarrassed?" Director Sun glared at him. Researcher Huang smiled and said, "Stimulate the fighting spirit of the students. It's always good to add more points. This is just a test. If they are afraid now, I'm afraid that they will be crippled in the future." Director Sun said coldly, "Examiners are not allowed to interfere in the student assessment. Huang Sheng, I've warned you before. The Department of Strengthening Education will suggest that the Civilization University penalize you for 3 years. If you dare to do it again, I suggest sending you to the vanguard camp of the Demon Suppression Army for 3 years. Researcher Huang's expression stiffened for a moment and was somewhat bitter. Director Sun, I Only said one thing. If you dare to quibble, do you believe that I will report you to the Department of Strong Breeding and disqualify you from being an assistant researcher? Huang Sheng did not dare to speak anymore and his face was filled with helplessness. Lu Hong, oh Lu Hong, you have to compensate me for my losses this time. The losses were too great. Actually, he did not dare to cheat or suppress her. After all, he was not the only examiner. However, he had only given Wu Lan a slight reminder just now. The Wu family had completely outlined the divine text, so she should not be so weak. It was just to stimulate her opponent's fighting spirit. Strictly speaking, it wasn't considered cheating. No matter how far Wu Lan went, it was still her own ability. However, under such circumstances, it was a big taboo for an examiner to secretly intervene. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't personally step onto the stage, Director Sun might have been able to take him down on the spot. Wu Lan had originally walked around 15 meters, so she had gained 150 points. Adding on her previous points, that was 805 points. She had just barely reached the upper class level. This was also the reason why Wu Lan had some confidence in reaching the upper class level. However, 800 points was just barely enough to enter. It couldn't be compared to some monsters. Even so, an upper-class student was the top genius in the academy. And at this moment, Huang Sheng's words seemed to have taken effect. When Wu Lan heard his words, she was instantly excited. She was actually going to lose. Impossible. In the next moment, Wu Lan suddenly closed her eyes and danced with joy. She did not know what she had encountered. She punched the air in front of her fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, she had actually walked about 2 meters more. Director Sun looked at Huang Sheng again with an icy gaze. She had scored an additional 20 points. Otherwise, Wu Lan would not have been able to hold on just now. Huang Sheng turned his head away from him. Because of a single sentence, he had already lost his salary for 3 years. This senior brother still wanted to find fault with him, bullying people. Chapter 172, might not be your 4. Chapter 172 might not be your 4. Beside him, the old man from the Nine Heavens Academy smiled and didn't say anything. Wu Lan wasn't interested. He had to go to the Great Xia Civilization Academy. As for Su Yu, he was a little interested. At this moment, Su Yu had walked almost 10 meters. He caught up and surpassed Zhou Tianqi. Zhou Tianqi had also walked almost 10 meters. At this moment, he was a small step behind Su Yu. At this moment, the other students could not hold on any longer. One after another, these students were brought out by the examiner. When Lu Yu was awake, she had walked 3 meters. When she saw that only Su Yu and the others were left in the examination hall, Lu Yu sighed in her heart. She was a little envious and a little jealous. She had known Su Yu for a long time. Before this, although Su Yu was also very outstanding, compared to her, she was ranked first and Su Yu was second among the examinees of Nanyuan Middle School's Institute of Civilization. This time, in the Institute of Civilization assessment, she had 240 points in the culture class, 63 points in her cultivation realm, and 30 points in the final assessment. Her total score was 333 points, and she had entered middle school, but she was extremely far from Su Yu. Her merit points were 0. In Nanyuan, she was only at 4th level of Kaiyuan, so there was no place for her to earn merit points. With more than 300 points, she had entered middle school. Compared to the previous Nanyuan examinees, she was already very outstanding. In previous years, there was only one student who entered the intermediate level in the Southern Yuan examinees. But this year, there was an additional Su Yu. At this moment, not counting this stage, he had already entered the upper level. The gap was getting bigger and bigger. Lu Yu's heart was filled with disappointment. She did not stay any longer and quickly left. Her heart could not help but be shaken. What a waste! Su Yu cursed. At this moment, he was gasping for breath. The blood knife in his hand had once again turned into the word blood. The blood little brother seemed to be full and tired. At this moment, he seemed to be gasping for breath as well. He wanted to go back to sleep. It couldn't hold on any longer. Suyu didn't know how far he had walked, nor could he see the students around him. However, he knew that he definitely couldn't walk as far as Wulan at this moment. That fool might have sketched out a complete divine text and reached the recuperation stage. He would definitely walk even faster and further than him. Looks like I'll have to use Thunder Underling. Suyu looked at the demon beasts that continuously surged out in front of him and felt somewhat helpless. These demon beasts weren't dangerous, but he couldn't walk past them when they blocked his path. The consumption of willpower wasn't small either. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to hold on any longer. Come out. In the next moment, a thunder word divine script appeared. Boom. Like a thunderous explosion, the thunder underling exploded with lightning and bombarded the demon beasts. The demon beasts were split into pieces and the area in front of them was instantly cleared. Suyu was delighted. This thing was much more useful than the blood underling, but the consumption of willpower was too fast. Suyu felt that his willpower was almost depleted. However, he could still persevere. These divine runes were nurtured in his sea of consciousness. Usually, there was also willpower stored in his body and he possessed a certain amount of power. Up until now, Suyu had yet to use the thunder underling. And the moment he used the thunder divine runes, the examiners looked at him one after another. Advance 3 meters in an instant. At this moment, Suyu had already walked to about 15 meters, just a little less than Wulan. Director Sun's expression changed. Did you guys feel it just now? Was it the second characteristic of a divine text, or did the second divine text appear? Suyu did not have the qualifications to be outside now. At this moment, everything was caused by an illusion. The examiners could not see how many divine runes he had used. They could only feel the existence of different characteristics. Did Suyu master a second divine rune, or just that one? But there was more than one characteristic. Suyu, whose willpower was not considered strong, should have been considered not bad if he had walked around 10 meters. After all, this guy was not as good as those students who had laid the foundation for the divine runes in the nature-nurturing stage. But now, Suyu was almost catching up to Wulan. Huang Sheng was not sure either. He shook his head and could not help but ask, by phone, this guy, how did he pick up a talent? Nanyuan. He was convinced that he could pick up a talent in this damned place. One had to know that the Great Xia Manor was so big and had so many people. Nanyuan was only a small city, very small. How lucky was Bai Feng to pick up a talent like this? Director Sun said faintly, whoever picks it up will get it. Hearing this, Huang Sheng was slightly taken aback. In the next moment, he couldn't help but look at Director Sun. You want to cut off his beard? It's not me. I have many classmates in the academy, and even my teacher is in the academy too. Director Sun said indifferently, what Bai Feng picks up is his. Who set the rules? Did Suyu have Bai Feng's name carved on his head? Huang Sheng grinned. He wanted to laugh. Forget it, he didn't want to laugh anymore. Anyway, it was Bai Feng's matter. What did it have to do with him? He didn't want to take Suyu in either. If he became a top-tier student, he wouldn't have the chance to take him in at all. On the other hand, Bai Feng had the qualifications. On one hand, he was young and a genius of the academy. On the other hand, it was because his teacher was powerful. How could other assistant researchers have the qualifications to take in top-tier students? Students wouldn't choose them unless they were from the same family. Chapter 173, each had their own choices, big chapter, please recommend, 1. Chapter 173, 8 each had their own choices, big chapter, please recommend, 1. Once the thunder underling appeared, God would be killed, and Buddha would be killed. Lightning bolts. This divine text seemed to have only one characteristic: blast you to death. It was a completely offensive divine text. It was very pure. The last time Suyu subdued it, he was half dead from the lightning. This was the first time Suyu controlled the thunder divine text, and it was extremely enjoyable to kill. At this moment, Suyu's willpower was still weak, and the thunder divine text had only been nurtured for a short period of time. In time, this would definitely be an extremely powerful divine text. The consumption of willpower is too great. Suyu muttered to himself. Suddenly, he had an idea. If the blood divine text was used as a saber, and the thunder divine text was integrated into the saber and exploded into the thunder yuan saber, what would be the result? Looking at the endless demon beasts in front of him, Suyu felt that he was reaching his limit. Should I try? At this moment, his head was dizzy. His willpower had been consumed too much. If this continued, he would fail anyway. Why not try? In the next moment, the blood underling that had just consumed too much appeared again and turned into a bloody blade. Under Suyu's control, the thunder word wanted to merge into the blade. However, the two were repelled. The blood underling repelled the thunder word, while the thunder underling did not seem to want to merge with the other either. The two repelled each other, which was similar to how they each occupied a piece of Suyu's sea of consciousness. In any case, they did not merge. Be good, be obedient. Don't look for a beating. Suyu threatened his two underlings with his consciousness. If they obediently fused with each other, everyone would work together to accomplish great things. Both of you are like spent arrows. If you don't work together at this time, how will you go further? How will you get first place? I've earned money. Only after I get 20 merit points can I exchange for good things to feed you. Both of you are gold-swallowing beasts. If you don't earn money for me, the both of you can just wait for your own demise. Suyu kept threatening them. If they didn't fuse, would he believe that he would beat them up right now? The two divine runes were still repelling each other, but they seemed to have sensed their master's will, so they slowly began to fuse. At this moment, Suyu didn't know that this wasn't something he could control. There was a fusion of divine runes. In the civilized university, this was also an advanced course. Moreover, it was usually a non-student course. In other words, they would only try it when they were in the air. The path of a civilized master had developed for so many years. Civilized masters continued to innovate. The path of divine runes was an extremely important path in the path of a civilized master. Naturally, there were countless people who studied it. The fusion of divine runes was a fusion of divine runes with similar characteristics, or it had a supporting effect on each other. For example, the fusion of the blood divine runes and the thunder divine runes, the two characteristics actually had no correlation. The possibility of failure was extremely high. Once it failed, the divine runes would not collapse, but the backlash would be severe. Suyu did not know that Lu Wenyan and Bai Feng had never thought that he would be thinking of fusing the divine runes at this time. This fellow's speed of grasping the divine runes was too fast. He had grasped both divine runes in the past 2 months. They had never thought that Suyu would suddenly think of using the divine runes to fuse and assist in battle at this time. This was within the range of the Bone Civilization's will. In reality, it could not soar into the sky, and the divine runes were not present outside, so there was almost no possibility of fusing. And within the range of the Bone Civilization's will, Suyu was given a chance. This place was somewhat special. He wasn't truly present, nor was he fusing. Instead, it was the projection of the Sea of Will divine runes fusing together. It was very complicated, and Suyu didn't understand it. The others had no idea what he was doing, and even Division Head Sun and the others outside couldn't sense it at all. The blood saber and the lightning merged. Su Yu prepared to clear the path. And at this moment, only he and Wu Lan were left in the examination hall. Wu Lan had stopped at around 18 meters, refusing to retreat no matter what. Even though she was sweating profusely, she still refused to ask for help. As for Su Yu, he had used the lightning to clear the path, and he had also walked close to her. The distance between them was less than a meter. In front, Huang Sheng looked at Division Head Sun. Should we let Wu Lan retreat? What's the rush? Division Head Sun wasn't in a hurry, her willpower is nourishing, and the divine runes are completely outlined. It shouldn't be a problem for her to walk a few more meters. The reason why she can't continue walking right now is because of fear and fear. In addition to her first experience, she wasted quite a bit of willpower. Even if we stay for a while longer, we won't be able to hurt her. Wu Lan's foundation was very good, but she didn't have much experience, or rather, she didn't have any experience at all. As a preparatory civilized master, the Wu family wasn't unwilling to let their children go on adventures and experience more hardships. Wu Lan's sister, Wu Qi, was a truly strong person, a strong woman who suppressed Bai Feng. The Wu family's philosophy was that before they could soar into the sky, there was no need to send their weak children to their deaths. This was also the philosophy of civilized masters. Therefore, Wu Lan's merit points were accumulated through work like assisting in translation, and not by participating in any missions. However, Su Yu and the other commoner classes were different from them. Most of them started training and taking risks at the bottom level. Otherwise, they would not be able to supply themselves and continue to grow stronger. Since Director Sun said so, Huang Sheng did not have any objections. He looked at Su Yu again, he shook his head and said, he can't go on anymore. 17 meters is very unexpected. Although he has completely outlined the divine text, his willpower has limited his development. Otherwise, with his tenacity, it would not be difficult for him to go to 20 meters. Although he had some dealings with Lu Hong, he also acknowledged at this moment that Su Yu was extremely outstanding. For him to be able to reach this stage in the southern Yuan, even if Lu Wenyan gave him help, it would be very limited. Resources were not the key. Some things were not a matter of resources. Director Sun looked at Huang Sheng and said with a smile, do you think that if he goes to the academy, will he be the next Bai Feng? Chapter 174, each had their own choice too. Chapter 174, each had their own choice too. Bai Feng. Huang Sheng said hesitantly, Su Yu is very outstanding, but Bai Feng was also one of the evildoers in the past. If it weren't for the Wu and Xia families suppressing him, and he has been immersed in Elder Hong's research for the past few years, he might have been able to catch up with those few. Su Yu is, a little inferior to him, right? After saying that, Huang Sheng continued, does Director Sun know how far Elder Hong's research has progressed? What a joke. I'm not in the academy, but you're the academy's researcher. You're asking me? Director Sun was speechless and couldn't be bothered to say anything else. He looked at Su Yu once again. At this moment, Su Yu's face was flushed red, and large drops of sweat dripped down. This fellow seemed to not have felt it. At this moment, there was a hint of excitement on his face, as if he had achieved some big goal. He was a little excited. Su Yu should go out. He can't take it anymore. Director Sun made a decision. Su Yu couldn't hold on anymore. He had already reached his limit. If he continued to hold on, he would only hurt himself. Although he also hoped that Su Yu would take first place and break the shackles of the wealthy class, it wasn't worth it to hurt himself for first place in the exam. Director Sun was about to let someone take him away. The next moment, the bone book vibrated slightly. Huang Sheng, who had been providing willpower all this time, had a slight change in expression. He asked, what is this kid doing? The few of them turned their gazes toward Su Yu. In the next moment, a faint golden light appeared above Su Yu's head. Division Head Sun's expression changed for a moment. Was there an accident? What kind of situation was this? This was also the first time he had encountered such a situation. A golden light appeared above the heads of Kaiyuan's students. The golden light was something that could only be displayed when willpower was strong and was about to appear. The same golden light had appeared when Lu Wenyan had manifested that day. Su Yu's side was very dim, but the appearance of this thing meant that Su Yu was unleashing his weak willpower at this moment, and it was showing signs of becoming stronger and stronger. Not good. Sun Chu was shocked. A word suddenly flashed in his mind, the last ray of light. Could it be that Su Yu's willpower had been exhausted to the limit and his sea of consciousness had collapsed? He had never heard of Kaiyuan having his sea of consciousness collapse. Just as he was about to throw Su Yu out, a faint golden light erupted from Su Yu's hand. It was as if he was lifting something and hacking forward with all his might. Divine runes, he's using divine runes. The few of them instantly deduced that Su Yu was probably using divine runes to resist the suppression of civilized will. Should I throw him out or not? At this moment, Sun Chu and Huang Sheng looked at each other with some hesitation. Throw him out. Su Yu was clearly unleashing his final attack. Throwing him out at this time was unfair. But if he didn't throw him out, what if this kid backfired on them? Lu Wenyan, Bai Feng, Elder Hong. At this moment, a few names flashed in their minds. Both of them had depressed expressions. It wasn't easy to handle. There was no need to hesitate. Because Su Yu had already started to explode, there was no time to stop him. In the next moment, a huge explosion sounded from the arena. Creak. The stage where the bone civilization was placed suddenly collapsed. Huang Sheng's willpower was suddenly exhausted. He staggered and almost fell down without any preparation. In Su Yu's eyes, at this moment, he used the Blood Divine Saber, the Lightning Divine Text, and the Lightning Essence Saber to attack. With this attack, the dozens of demonic beasts in front of him were directly blasted into pieces. Bang! With a loud bang, the saber in Su Yu's hand shattered and turned into pieces. Soon, it slowly disappeared. The two divine runes disappeared and returned to his mind. It was extremely dim. The consumption was huge. Su Yu had a splitting headache. He felt like his head was about to explode, but he still remembered that he had to move forward. Walk, continue walking. There's no pressure. The demon beast was killed, so there's no pressure. Su Yu was a little dazed. He continued to walk forward a few steps. In the next moment, a few illusory figures appeared in front of him. Su Yu shook his head and was still a little confused. In front of him, Director Sun and the others were looking at him with strange eyes. The platform where the civil will was placed had already collapsed. The bone book in Huang Sheng's hand also appeared a little dim at this moment. Huang Sheng's face was filled with heartache. He was in big trouble. The civilized will had consumed too much of his willpower. Not to mention his own willpower, Su Yu had used up a lot of the internal strength of the civilized will. If it collapsed, he would be in trouble. This was the legacy left behind by some fallen civilized masters, and they were usually Shanghai realm existences. If they were destroyed, he wouldn't be able to afford it. Behind Su Yu, Wu Lan opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Su Yu, and the distance was at least 20 meters. Wu Lan's expression changed. How was this possible? The gap couldn't be that big. No matter how talented and amazing Su Yu was, he couldn't be more than 20 meters away from her. This was impossible. Wu Lan couldn't believe it, and she was dumbfounded. In the next moment, her eyes suddenly turned red, and she wanted to cry. She could not stand this injustice. She felt so wronged. She really felt so wronged. Her mouth shrunk and she wanted to cry. She had to endure it. If she did not cry, she would be laughed at by others. But, she really wanted to cry. The people in front did not have the mood to pay attention to her. Director Sun's brows twitched. He looked at Su Yu and frowned slightly. Nonsense. Su Yu was still a little confused. Nonsense. Director Sun frowned. There was surprise and anger. Did you hear what I said before? You almost destroyed yourself for the sake of a test. This is a boorish man. I even praised you for your wisdom before, but now it seems that you are just a little smart, not very smart. Chapter 175, Each had their own choices. Chapter 175 Each had their own choices recommendations. He was really a little angry. Su Yu's current state was obviously caused by the excessive consumption of willpower. If the consequences were serious, it might cause the sea of willpower to become completely silent. This was trading the future for an insignificant first place. Trade, how to trade. Su Yu's choice made him very angry. Su Yu gradually woke up. He opened his eyes and looked at the people in front of him. Director Sun was angry, and Huang Sheng's face was filled with heartache. On the side of the Nine Heavens Academy, that old man was tugging at his beard as if he was thinking about life. Director Sun flew into a rage and quickly said, "How do you feel now? Is there any problem with your sea of consciousness?" Su Yu still had a headache, but after sensing it for a while, his two underlings seemed to be in a deep sleep. There was no movement, and the problem with his sea of consciousness wasn't too big. Actually, there was no problem. There was still a golden atlas floating in his sea of consciousness. Su Yu felt that there was no way there would be a problem with this thing. Su Yu shook his head. As he shook his head, his headache became even more painful. He hurriedly said, "It's fine. It's just that the consumption of the divine runes is a little too great. I need to spend some time to nurture it. It's fine." Director Sun heaved a sigh of relief and then said in a deep voice, "What did you do in there just now?" "I didn't do anything." Su Yu wanted to deny it. It was not that he did not want to talk about the two divine inscriptions, but Huang Sheng had been stroking the bone book the whole time. His face was filled with heartache as if he had broken it. He was afraid that Huang Sheng would want him to pay for it, and he should not be able to afford it. Su Yu said apprehensively, "Is it, the divine inscriptions in the assessment are broken? Can it be repaired?" Director Sun was angry and wanted to laugh. He said speechlessly, "It's not broken. The consumption is a little too high. This is prepared for you yuan opening students. What did you make in there just now? The consumption is a little too high. Just send it back and nurture it for a period of time." Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that it was not broken. At this time, Huang Sheng stopped touching the book. He raised his head and looked at Su Yu. He said somewhat helplessly, "How did you do it? The willpower that just erupted is even stronger than the nurturing nature. The southern Yuan is only a small city. This civilized will is not a very strong civilized will. It's not a big problem to test the nurturing nature in general." He did not know what to say now. He was going to lose money. Of course, it meant that the possibility of losing money was not high, but how could he explain it? Everyone did not believe it. They would only think that in order to save willpower, he did not inject too much willpower before, which resulted in the depletion of the civilized will's own reserve power. Before coming here, there were rules, and if too much was consumed, he had to lose money. Huang Sheng turned his head to look at Director Sunday. He felt that this person could prove to him that he had invested a lot of willpower. Director Sun couldn't be bothered with him at all. The money wasn't for him, so why should he explain? He couldn't be bothered to get involved in this matter. Could it be that he had to go to the academy to explain to those old fellows? He didn't want to face those old fellows. As for this person from the Nine Heavens Academy, he could forget about it. Director Sun ignored him and said again, "Su Yu, how did you do it just now?" Su Yu hesitated for a moment. Seeing the situation, Director Sun said, is it your trump card? To be honest, this thing doesn't pose any threat to soaring in the sky, and it's the same for myriad stones. I'm just worried that if you try it recklessly, it might cause problems. What he said was also the truth. Kaiyuan's trump card was not worth mentioning to them. Suyu thought for a moment and said, "It's the Thunder Origin Blade. I used divine runes to attach it to my weapon and executed the Thunder Origin Blade. I slashed it once, and that's it." Thunder Origin Blade. The second move? Division Head Sun could not help but ask. If that was the case, it was possible. The key was that this kid was only at the 9th level of Kaiyuan, but he had already grasped the second move. This was a peerless genius in the path of the fighter. No, it's just the first move. Impossible. Director Sun shook his head. The first slash, coupled with Suyu's willpower and divine runes, would not cause such a huge amount of damage. Suyu scratched his head, but he still opened his mouth to speak. It's not one divine rune, it's 2 divine runes. Suyu said innocently, I didn't know that it would destroy this either. I have 2 divine runes, 1 divine culture saber, and 1 divine rune with a lightning attack, and that's it. Oh. In the next moment, 6 lantern-like eyes stared at him. 3 people, 6 eyes, and at this moment, all of them were emitting golden light. It was really golden light. The soaring expert's willpower appeared, and their apertures were opened. At this moment, without self-suppression, golden light really erupted. Suyu only felt his scalp go numb, and his 4 limbs became weak. It was too terrifying. The 6 lanterns disappeared in the next moment. Countless thoughts flashed through the 9 Heavens Academy's old man who had been lazy. Before the other 2 spoke, he quickly said, "Come to the 9 Heavens Academy and become a Shanghai Realm Master. 500 merit points, 100 yuan chi liquid drops, enter the secret realm 3 times. The 9 Heavens Academy specializes in the fusion of divine literature. They are one of the pathfinders of the Great Xia Academy and even the entire human realm." The old man's eyes were bright. This condition is unique to the 9 Heavens Academy. Huang Sheng is here, and the Great Xia Civilization Academy does not lack top-tier geniuses. If they can offer such a condition, you can go yourself, I will not stop you. Huang Sheng was slightly stunned, and an awkward expression appeared on his face. The old man was right. The Great Xia Civilization Academy could not offer such a condition. This was because they did not lack evildoers and were not willing to pay too much for some geniuses that had yet to materialize. With these resources, they could definitely nurture many geniuses. Geniuses would take the initiative to go to the Great Xia Institute of Civilization even if they did not need money. This was the confidence of the Great Xia Institute of Civilization. Chapter 176, each had their own choices, big chapter for 4. Chapter 176, each had their own choices, big chapter for 4. Director Sun did not say anything at the moment. Obviously, what the old man said was true. Director Sun was still thinking about what Suyu had just said. After a moment, he said, "Suyu, Divine Runes Fusion, this is not something you should try at this stage. Lu Wenyan and Bai Feng might not have taught you, but I will teach you today to remind you that this is very dangerous. This is an attempt, and this time, it is within the scope of civilization will, so you are fine. If it were in the outside world, you would die. As for the matter of Divine Runes Fusion, you can go to the academy to understand it. You can choose to take some courses for researchers of Divine Runes Fusion, which will be of great help to you." As Director Sun spoke, he frowned slightly and said, "Your willpower is too exhausted, and it may take a long time to recover. Including Divine Runes recovery, it will require a large amount of time and resources. You are taking a risk this time. In addition, you have grasped 2 Divine Runes," Director Sun said in puzzlement. "When did you first come into contact with Divine Runes?" Suyu's expression didn't change, and he said honestly, "It's been several years." A few years ago, Instructor Lu taught me, but at that time, I still hadn't finished sketching. Later, I read 5 or 6 pieces of the text of will and sketched out 2 divine runes. Several years. Director Sun heaved a sigh of relief and said, Lu Wenyan still has so many pieces of will. Su Yu shook his head. I don't know. He had them in the past. This old fellow, Director Sun coughed lightly and could not help but laugh and scold, he better hide these things well, or else. The great Xia Manor will have to look for him to collect the debt. On the side, Huang Sheng was also speechless. Lu Wenyan actually still had many pieces of will. This old man really could hold it in. Every year, he cried about how poor the great Xia Manor was. Every year, he said that he had no money to eat, but in the end, he still had the article of will for his students to use. However, after thinking about it, he did not say anything. His junior brother was now an old senior researcher at the Great Xia Civilization University, so the article of will did not seem to be a big deal. Moreover, there were still some gossip circulating in the university. It was said that there was even a romantic history back then. Who knew who Lu Wenyan had asked for it from? He could live off a woman. Cough cough, no one dared to say anything even if he ate it. After all, the main character in the story was not an ordinary person. He could not afford to offend him. Huang Xing instantly remained silent and pretended not to hear anything. He did not dare to get involved in this matter. However, this little fellow, Su Yu, could it be that Lu Wenyan wanted to return? Sending Su Yu into the academy, did Lu Wenyan want to return to the Great Xia Civilization Academy again? 2 divine runes. The few of them were still deep in thought when Su Yu couldn't help but ask, Teachers, how many points do I get this time? After saying this, the few of them looked at each other. After a long while, Director Sun said hesitantly, This time, it was our mistake. If we had known in advance, we wouldn't have used this book. According to the standards of the Great Xia Mansion, when your final attack explodes, the pressure in front of you will be cleared. Walking 10 meters shouldn't be a problem. Huang Sheng also nodded and said, The civilization ambition of the Great Xia Mansion is much stronger than ours. According to the power of the explosion, it should be able to walk 10 meters. Adding the previous 17 meters, it should be able to walk 27 meters. At this moment, they could only make a rough judgment. Director Sun looked at Su Yu and said, You walked in front of us. Logically speaking, this is our mistake. It's not a problem to calculate 50 meters for you. The responsibility lies with us. The Academy and the Great Xia Mansion will punish us. It has nothing to do with you. But Su Yu, you have to know that if you say that you walked 50 meters, some evildoers from the Great Xia Civilization Academy will not be polite to you. Director Sun said seriously, If you walk to the end, it's almost impossible for anyone to walk to the end. You don't have the strength to bear such an honor. It will only bring you more trouble and not benefit you at all. Civilized masters are all intelligent. I'll give you 2 choices now. First, consider yourself to have walked 50 meters. Second, according to the standards of the Great Xia Mansion, calculate 27 meters and add 270 points. Choose the first option. Your total score is 1,127 points. Choose the second option. Your total score is 897 points. Director Sun said seriously, 897 points, top tier. 1,127 points. You are a monstrous genius of the Great Xia Manor. You will be exposed under the spotlight. Everyone will pay attention to you, watch you, and challenge you. Since you have received the halo, you must be prepared for this. Director Sun took a deep breath. You are prepared for this? Monstrous, that means that some people are just one step away from soaring into the sky. The geniuses of the Great Zhou Manor who have been in school for half a year are monstrous. On the side of the Great Xia family, Wu Lan's elder sister, Bai Feng, and Xia Yuan are all considered as monsters. Bai Feng is considered to be the weakest among them, but he is actually a little behind. Wu Lan's elder sister, Wu Qi, entered school at the age of 18, became a monster at the age of 20, became a monster at the age of 22, became a monster at the age of 22, became a monster at the age of 25, became a monster at the age of 25, became a monster at the age of 26, and became a monster at the age of 8. Wu Qi will definitely be able to step into Ling Yun before the age of 30. It might even be the year after next year. Director Sun said seriously, "This is our mistake. You can choose. We won't let you retake the exam." Suyu thought for a moment and asked, "Teacher, is there a big difference in the admission treatment?" "It's more or less the same. Because at their level, they would have been accepted as students long ago. They wouldn't even be interested in the basic treatment of the academy." Director Sun smiled and said, "For example, if you went to the Nine Heavens Academy and had all the benefits he mentioned, would you still be interested in the 1 merit point pocket money that he gave you for a month? Of course, a top-tier genius would receive 3 merit points for a month. For those who are at the monster level, they would receive 5 merit points for free." Chapter 177, Each had their own choices, a big chapter asking for. Chapter 177, Each had their own choices, a big chapter asking for recommendations, 5. Suyu muttered, "In that case, the difference of 2 merit points in a month and 24 merit points in a year is a total of 120 points even if you are a student for 5 years in the academy. This is not counting the difference in other aspects." Division Head Sun smiled and did not say anything. Suyu said again, "Teacher, if you are punished this time, how much will you be punished?" Director Sun raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "Let's start with 100 merit points. It's equivalent to killing one to make up for it." Since they had made a mistake, they naturally had to bear the responsibility. Killing one to make up for it was more or less the same. Suyu scratched his head and said, "Teacher, it's not appropriate. I've been fined for nothing. How about? You see, a teacher gave me 20 points and I'll just pretend that it didn't happen." The few of them looked at him strangely. "Kid, you're really good." Were they talking about business? Director Sun laughed and said, "You don't choose to be a monster. If that's the case, the Great Xia Mansion will know about you." Suyu said innocently, "I'm not. If I were, I would admit it. But I'm not. It's meaningless. I'll take what I want myself when I think I can reach that step." At that time, what kind of monster was that? If I was stronger than him and beat him until he cried, would there still be people who think I'm not? But now, I'm afraid of being beaten until I cry and find trouble with me every day. Then, would I still cultivate or not? Suyu sighed, "You're right. I can't afford such treatment now. There's no need to do this at all. Other than having a bit of an undeserved reputation, it will instead cause countless troubles. Why bother?" Director Sun smiled. He slowly said, "To be able to see yourself clearly is also a skill. However, forget about doing business. We can afford to pay 100 merit points. If we make a mistake, it's our carelessness. This is the rear. If we are careless at the front line, we will be completely annihilated. Buy a lesson and remember it well. Next time, don't underestimate the world." Director Sun no longer had a smile on his face. With a solemn expression, he said, "This time, I didn't think it through. It's my own responsibility not to apply for a stronger civilization spirit assessment before coming here. Don't even think about taking advantage of me." As for the two of them, Director Sun looked at the two of them. Huang Sheng and Suyu hurriedly said, "Listen to Director Sun. That's good. There's no need to shirk responsibility. It's not like we're beheading them. Just kill them all and they'll all be back." Director Sun smiled and looked at Suyu again, "You're very smart. Of course, in my opinion, you're still a little smart, not a great intellect. Of course, even I don't dare to claim that I have great intellect when it comes to things like great intellect. Being a little smart is enough. It's enough for me to live longer and more comfortably than others. This matter ends here. You take your reward, and we will take on our responsibilities. The first place in the Civilized Academy examination will be awarded according to the standard. Huang Sheng will reward you with an additional 20 merit points. Su Yu was a little disappointed. He felt that Huang Sheng and the old man were actually tempted to spend 20 merit points to settle this matter. In the end, Director Sun, who had been smiling previously, was unwilling at this juncture. Su Yu was helpless. He had lost 60 merit points for nothing. No, including the previous loss, he had lost 80 merit points. How heartbreaking. Su Yu's heart ached. Wu Lan, who was at the back, was heartbroken. No one cared about her. 655 points, plus the current 180 points and 835 points, the superior class genius stood there for a long time. She was on the verge of tears. No one cared about her and pretended not to see her. I want to cry. She wanted to cry again. These people were too bad. No one was there to comfort her. Chapter 178, Assessment Ended 1. Chapter 178, Assessment Ended 1. At the entrance of the examination hall, Su Yu and Wu Lan walked out with dejected expressions. The students who were still waiting outside were a little stunned. How did the two of them do? Did the two of them fail the assessment? That didn't seem right. The two of them had stayed until the end. When some of them came out, the two of them had already walked a long way. Why did they look so dejected? Wu Lan took first place. Then why did they have such an expression? Su Yu took first place. It didn't seem like it. Su Yu was dispirited, his face was pale, and he had a dejected expression. It was as if he had just lost a few 100 million. How did he look like he took first place? The examinees were all stunned. Outside the door, Zhou Tianqi was also waiting for the results. What was going on with these two? He had done pretty well this time. After 3 rounds of assessment, his total score was 470 points. As for merit points, sorry, there were none. In the Great Xia Manor, there were many geniuses. Those like Wu Lan who had merit points required willpower to reach the stage of recuperation. Zhou Tianqi had not reached this stage yet. If he really wanted to recuperate, he would not have come to the Southern Yuan. Although he did not enter the upper middle grade, this grade was already very good. In fact, his luck was even better, and he could enter the upper middle grade as well. The upper middle grade was usually only entered by a genius who had completely outlined the divine text. He had only outlined a portion of the divine text, but it had not reached that stage. Zhou Tianqi looked at the two of them suspiciously. He was the last one to leave besides the two of them. When he left, the two of them had already walked quite a distance. However, Su Yu still lagged behind Wu Lan. Logically speaking, Wu Lan should have won. Then what did Wu Lan's current expression mean? Everyone was scratching their hearts with their paws. They wanted to ask, but they did not know who to ask. Wu Lan had a bad temper. Su Yu was not familiar with them. There were not many people from the Southern Yuan. Even Lu Yu and Su Yu were not familiar with each other, so it was not appropriate to ask about this. Seeing that the two of them were about to leave, one of the students became anxious and hurriedly asked, "Su Yu, how was your exam?" She didn't dare to ask Wu Lan. Wu Lan was very dejected now. Looking at that expression, if anyone dared to question her, she would fight to the death. It was still very scary for a woman to fight to the death. Su Yu seemed to be easier to talk to. It was all right. Su Yu replied. It was all right. Everyone didn't know what to say. Even if they didn't take the exam, Su Yu was already considered top tier. How could this be considered all right? Su Yu did not say much. He had already told them, but they did not give him any merit points. Why did he say so much? If he did not say anything, someone else did. The dazed Wulan woke up. She looked at Su Yu with a face full of grief and indignation. Suddenly, she shouted, "Su Yu, I've lost this time. I won't lose again next time. I'm going back to the Great Xia Manor. I'll wait for you at the Civilized Academy." With that said, this woman stomped off and ran away. She looked as if she was about to explode from being bullied. Su Yu felt that he should get used to it. This fool always liked to say something stupid. It would be fine as long as he got used to it. He was used to it, but the others had blank expressions on their faces. Su Yu had one. It didn't make sense. Su Yu was still quite a few points behind Wulan previously. How did he turn the tables in the blink of an eye? What had happened after they had left just now? Zhou Tianqi's expression also changed. Wulan's willpower had nourished her character and sketched out a complete divine text, but in the end, she had lost to Su Yu. What did this mean? A complete divine text, and the divine text must be very powerful. At the very least, it must be stronger than Wulan. If not for this, Su Yu would not have been able to win. Is this still the performance of a full 20% willpower? Zhou Tianqi could not understand. At this time, Su Yu should be considered a genius if he could draw one or two divine inscriptions, but why was he able to draw a complete divine inscription, one that surpassed Wulan's? Thinking of Su Yu's threat, Zhou Tianqi had a headache. When he arrived at the Institute of Civilization, his family still had some background, but this background was not worth mentioning to the Institute of Civilization. Before he even arrived at the university, he had already provoked a high-class genius. No. It should be a high-class genius. Wulan was definitely a high-class genius. Since Su Yu had one, he would definitely be a high-class genius. After provoking such a genius, would he still have a life in the University of Civilization of Great Xia? Will he go to the University of Civilization of Great Xia? Zhou Tianqi did not know, but at this moment, he vaguely made a decision in his heart. If Su Yu went to the University of Civilization of Great Xia, he would go to the University of Civilization of Nine Heavens. He could not stay in the same academy as this guy. In fact, he felt that he had been wronged and did not do anything. He only complimented Su Yu a few times and was telling the truth. If he did not consider the situation at that time, there would not have been any problems. But Su Yu seemed to hold a grudge. Zhou Tianqi cursed in his heart. He was really unlucky this time. He had suddenly offended a large group of people. Who was he going to reason with? Sun Chu, Su Yu, Wulan, and the rest of his companions, including his family. The more he thought about it, the more depressed Zhou Tianqi felt. There was no justice at all. First place Su Yu. At this moment, the students also came to their senses. They were all in disbelief. Su Yu had defeated the genius of the Great Xia Manor, Wulan. A miracle had really happened in the southern Yuan area. Su Yu was not in the mood to watch their expressions change. He had expended a lot of energy and only wanted to go back and sleep. He was not in the mood to communicate with the others. At the same time, Great Xia Civilization Academy. Su Yu is number 1. Superior class. Bai Feng was stunned when he heard the news. What was going on? Superior class, above 800 points. On Su Yu's side, he had been keeping an eye on him. A piece of divine text, his willpower had barely reached 20% of full capacity. In the third stage, he had at most 150 points, 100 merit points, 200 points in the culture class, and in addition to the realm assessment, 250 points would be too much. Chapter 179, Assessment ended 2. Chapter 179, Assessment ended 2. If he were to calculate, even if he were to get the highest score, he would only get around 700 points. High class, above 800 points. The difference of more than 100 points was not something that could be easily obtained. How could it be? Bai Feng sat on the sofa, deep in thought. He was not surprised that Su Yu would appear. If he could not appear, he, Bai Feng, would not be interested either. But now, he had suddenly exceeded his expectations and scored more than 100 points. This was beyond his expectations. In terms of realm, he got the first place in Zhanjiang College this morning, and he got a lot more in terms of realm. Other than that, he can only perform well in the third stage. It's related to divine prose and willpower. Bai Feng's mouth suddenly twitched. He couldn't have drawn divine prose again, right? He recalled the last time when Su Yu had drawn the divine text the first time he saw the text of willpower. Could there be a second time? Could it be that martial uncle had shown him the text of willpower again? Bai Feng guessed for a moment and felt that the possibility was very high. The more he thought about it, the bigger Bai Feng's head became. When he left the last time, he thought that there wasn't much time left before the assessment, so Su Yu should be obediently nurturing the divine text he had obtained the last time. But now that Su Yu might have two divine texts, was that a good thing? Not necessarily. If there are too many divine texts, you won't be able to nurture your willpower. I'm afraid that I'll drag you down. Bai Feng frowned. The two divine texts were indeed a pleasant surprise, but to Su Yu himself, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. Martial uncle was a little reckless. If Lu Wenyan knew, he would probably be aggrieved. He was learning martial techniques for Su Yu, not divine texts for him. Who asked that kid to be too terrifying? He actually condensed divine texts after just one look. Who could blame him? However, after cultivating two divine literature, this kid's willpower is still growing steadily. This means that it's still within his ability range. Bai Feng heaved a sigh of relief again, and then his expression turned ugly. Superior class. It was over. If nothing unexpected happened, Su Yu's information would probably have already appeared in front of many researchers by now. In the next moment, Bai Feng took out his communication device and quickly dialed a number. He hurriedly said, "Spread the news to the outside world that Su Yu has advanced to the upper tier. I've carefully educated him and sent over dozens of writings of will to nurture him. Whoever wants to snatch it will compensate me." The other party fell silent for a moment before a voice sounded, "Bai Feng, will anyone believe what you say? Who cares if they believe it or not? Let's spread the news first." Bai Feng said gloomily, "I'm also very surprised that this brat has advanced to the upper tier. I didn't expect him to enter the upper tier so quickly." At that time, it was already difficult for him to enter the upper tier, but it was more or less the middle upper tier, so he didn't attract much attention. This is great. My genius cultivation plan has been shattered. It was very depressing. Could it be that you instigated teacher to leave just for this, Su Yu? The person on the other side asked and began to doubt Bai Feng's motive. Nonsense. Bai Feng denied it and denied. At that time, Su Yu was just an ordinary student. Why would I instigate teacher to leave just for him? Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and spread the news. You. The person on the other side was very helpless and quickly said, "Whether Su Yu is willing to follow you or not depends on his own wishes. Moreover, you, Bai Feng, don't lack high-class students. If you really want to accept him, it's not that you can't accept him. What's the rush?" Of course, an assistant researcher didn't have the capital to do so, but a genius assistant researcher definitely had the capital to do so. A 20-something-year-old at the 7th level of the soaring heavens realm had a status similar to that of a middle-class researcher in the academy. He was even more valued than the average Ling Yun. Bai Feng said unhappily, "That was my discovery. Why should I give it to someone else? He was the one who had discovered it in the first place." Without his essay of will, Lu Wenyan might not have written this for Su Yu before the assessment. After all, Su Yu's willpower was still weak at that time. Why would he give away the genius he discovered? Moreover, he had even swindled his teacher out for this matter. It would be a great loss if he didn't accept it. There was also Lu Hong's side. They were preparing to do great things together. Su Yu was also one of the key factors. The person on the other side couldn't be bothered to talk about it anymore, so he didn't bring it up again. Very quickly, he said, "Don't just care about the students anymore. Your task is very heavy now. The academy might want to ban the research institute, but without teacher. It's all your fault. The research institute hasn't produced any results for many years, and it consumes a lot of resources. Once it's banned, you know how heavy our losses are. Teacher has poured all of his effort into it all these years. Almost all of our resources are concentrated in the research institute. Once the research institute is banned, Bai Feng, that will be a major matter that will affect the future." Bai Feng frowned. "Is there any news from the higher-ups?" "Yes, we are in the midst of a discussion." The person on the other end sighed. Teacher's reputation is valuable, but after so many years, the academy has been allocating funds every year and has even taken up some of the other resources of the academy. The head of the academy has also suggested that we stop for now. "Stop, stop," Bai Feng's expression was unsightly as he said in a deep voice, "How do we stop? We have paid such a huge price in the past. If we stop now, everything will be ruined. There's no other way, unless the research institute produces the results now and convinces the higher-ups. If we can't produce the results," Bai Feng said in a deep voice, "it's not the time to produce the results yet, there's no way to produce the results. Then once the higher-ups approve it, the research institute will be banned and all the information will be sealed. The research institute might be assigned to other researchers." "No." Bai Feng said somewhat angrily, "In this way, teachers' decades of hard work and our years of hard work will all be in vain." Chapter 180, Assessment Ended 3. Chapter 180, Assessment Ended. That's why I said that the key at this time is not to recruit students, but to protect the research institute. The person on the other side sighed again. "You should pay more attention. Don't be tormented by small matters all day. Oh right, if you can't do it, go look for Wuxia, Xia Yuan and the others. See if you can pull in some support. At the very least, you can pull in a few more votes at the Heart Cultivation Pavilion conference." Bai Feng said gloomily, "I can't do anything about it. These guys don't have a good relationship with me. Aren't geniuses important? I think you can do it, but if you really can't, you can sell your looks and try to seduce Wuxia. You want to get beaten up?" Bai Feng rolled his eyes. The next moment, he sighed and said, "I can't. Wuxia won't budge. It's useless to sell his looks. If you don't believe me, you can try it. I guarantee that it won't work. If you really can't do it, why don't you go to the Heart Cultivation Pavilion and seduce a pavilion elder?" Scram. The two of them chatted for a while before Bai Feng said seriously, "Let's not talk about this anymore. I'll think of a way to convince a few pavilion elders in the next few days. Teacher isn't around, so we can't stop this project. Otherwise, I'll die when I come back. Teacher can chop me to death. Be more careful." "I know," Bai Feng replied. Then, he said, "Tell me, do you want to look for Uncle Master for help? Although Uncle Master has been gone for so many years, he still has connections in the academy." "We can't do that unless it's the last moment," the person on the other side quickly said. "Connections are a thing that can be used only once, and each time we use them, we lose our feelings. Uncle Master has been able to stay safe and sound in the southern plains for so many years because of this reason. Everyone is still apprehensive. Once we use them this time, the next time we run into trouble, it won't be easy to resolve it. Moreover, Uncle Master hasn't been involved in the matters of the academy these past few years, so it won't be good for him to get involved." Bai Feng nodded slightly, and then said with some dissatisfaction, "Doesn't the head of the academy have anything to say? Is he the one pushing it, or is it someone else?" "It's hard to say." "What's hard to say?" Bai Feng said with dissatisfaction, "It's highly likely that the head of the academy is the one pushing it." "Not necessarily. After so many years, the head of the academy has long had the opportunity to ban it, but he hasn't made a sound. I feel that it might not be so." Bai Feng didn't continue. Whether it was the case or not, it didn't matter now. After going to the heart cultivation pavilion, this matter had to be resolved. Otherwise, if it was really banned, it would be a big problem. After hanging up the call, Bai Feng fell into deep thought. In the next moment, Bai Feng made another call. Once the call was connected, he quickly said, "Think of a way to reject the proposal to revoke the research institute from the heart cultivation pavilion." Lu Hong's voice came from the other side, "Do you really think I'm your little brother? Cut the crap. If you don't think of a way, once it's banned, our side will suffer heavy losses. If your side presses on us, I'm afraid they will swallow us up. If we lose, do you have any benefits?" Bai Feng said unhappily, "Win-win, do you understand? Without us restricting you, you are only a 6th level ascendant. What right do you have to participate in this?" Lu Hong felt that he was on a pirate ship. Feeling a little powerless, Lu Hong said gloomily, "Bai Feng, you're the one who begged me, not me. Where did you get the confidence to be so arrogant like me? Whether you're arrogant or not, the result is the same. Why not be more arrogant?" Bai Feng was very arrogant. Then, he smiled and said, "Of course, we're partners. It was just a joke. Don't mind it. Old Lu, you don't want to lose your income in the future, right? With that little salary of yours, you won't be able to defeat Ling Yun for the rest of your life. Don't tell me you're planning to go to the heavenly battlefield to do something." Lu Hong was powerless and quickly said, "All right, I can help you. But once the research institute's results are out, I want a portion of the profits." "No problem. Your promise doesn't count. When Elder Hong returns, I'll personally go and say that Elder Hong is more shameless than you, unless Elder Hong doesn't admit to it either." Bai Feng scoffed, "Is my teacher that kind of person? A villain like you only knows how to measure the heart of a gentleman with a villain's heart." "I'm hanging up." Lu Hong couldn't be bothered with him and quickly hung up the call. Bai Feng waited for him to hang up the call and stroked his chin. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Share a portion of the profit." "I didn't say what I'm going to give you. It's not breaking my promise to give you a small portion of the profit." However, it won't work on Lu Hong's side either. Bai Feng looked out of the window. He still had to find someone else. Let's talk about Su Yu's side after he enters the school. He originally wanted to head over there now, but it seemed like he didn't have the time to do so. It was only a month away from entering the school, so it wasn't too long. Nanyuan. The news gradually spread. This year, the first place in Zhanjiang College's assessment and the first place in Civilization College's assessment were both taken by the same person. Su Yu. He had defeated outsiders from the Great Xia Mansion, including some of the geniuses. He was also quite famous in the Great Xia Mansion. In an instant, Su Yu's reputation spread throughout Nanyuan. Of the 4 college assessments, war and civilization were the most important. As for tomorrow's internal affairs and scientific research, they were comparatively much worse. Su Yu had taken the first place in the 2 most important examinations, which shocked many people. The Chen family. Chen Qinghe was also somewhat emotional and in disbelief. He knew that Su Yu had brains, but having brains did not mean that he had the strength. Taking the first place in the 2 major examinations in one go was not a problem that could be solved with brains. Su Yu is about to take off. Looking at his own son, he only knew how to grin foolishly at this moment. Chen Qinghe was helpless. In the next moment, he had the wooden stick in his hand. He stared at Chen Hao and said angrily, "Don't cultivate. Just smile foolishly. Come and get beaten up." Chen Hao was stunned. "Today, I was admitted to Zhangjin College." Father was so happy that he was about to explode in the afternoon. Why was he going to beat someone up again? If you don't beat him up, you won't learn your lesson. Remember, when you arrive at the Great Xia Manor, keep a low profile and behave yourself. Don't cause any trouble. Su Yu has a good relationship with them, so you have to know your limits. It's best to keep a distance from him. Silly son, he's a genius, aren't you? Chen Hao shouted as he fled. You isn't the kind of person who looks down on others. He won't care. Stupid guy. Chen Qinghe chased after him and started fighting. He said in a low voice, "Stupid guy. He is a genius." The Civilization Academy has not been peaceful recently. Everyone knows that. If he goes to the academy, the opponents he will provoke will definitely not be ordinary people. If they can't deal with him, how can they not deal with you? There are not many people close to Su Yu. If his father goes to the Demon Suppression Army, who would dare to provoke him? Lu Wenyan was a civilization master who flew in the sky. I'm afraid that not many people would dare to find trouble with him. Only you have a good relationship with him. You are weak and stupid. If you don't want to cause trouble for Su Yu, then you better keep your feet on the ground. A fire at the city gate will bring disaster to the fish in the pond. You are that fish. It's not that Dad doesn't want you to get closer to him. You should know your limits. Don't let everyone know that you, Chen Hao, are Su Yu's best friend. That will not only cause trouble for you, but also Su Yu. Dad, then tell me clearly. Why did you hit me? If I didn't hit you, would you remember? Chen Qinghe hit his butt again and said angrily, "Don't think that I don't know. You little bastard, you don't remember anything else, but when I hit you, you kept a diary." Dad! Chen Hao cried out in surprise. His father had peeked at his diary. Remember this time too. Remember it clearly. On June 25th, your father gave you a beating. Remember it in your heart. Bang bang bang. Chen Hao screamed again and again. This time, he really remembered. His father was too inhumane. He said what he wanted to say, but why did he have to beat him up? Su Yu did not know about the Chen family's farce. Su Yu also did not know about the turmoil in the Institute of Civilization. He had used up too much willpower and too much divine runes. He had long lost the mood to think about anything else. When he returned home, he began to fall asleep. And just as he fell into a deep sleep, the golden atlas in his mind rippled slightly. At the next moment, the surrounding Yuan Qi gathered. Streams of Yuan Qi were absorbed by Su Yu. It was not his physical body, but the atlas. The Yuan Qi that was absorbed was converted through the atlas and quickly turned into different forces that spread throughout his sea of will. The two dim divine runes seemed to have received some nourishment as they gradually began to recover their radiance. The willpower he had expended had also recovered a little at this moment. Su Yu's tightly knitted brows gradually relaxed. The symptoms of his splitting headache from before gradually disappeared in his sleep. Chapter 181, First Impressions of Civilized Institutions 1. Chapter 181, First Impressions of Civilized Institutions 1. June 26, Internal Affairs and Research Institutions Assessment Day. Of course, this had little to do with Su Yu. In fact, he didn't attach too much importance to it. In an era where the strong ruled, these things were easily overlooked. Even if these things were indispensable, they still couldn't attract everyone's attention. The students couldn't get into war and civilized institutions, so they considered participating in the assessment of these two institutions. At this moment, Su Yu was entertaining guests. There were many of them. There were examiners from the civilization academies, and there were also examiners from the war academies. Great Xia War Academy, Great Xia Civilization Academy, Dragon Martial Academy, Nine Heavens Academy, Tao Seeking Academy. All the famous academies had sent people today. The War Academy was inferior, and the Civilization Academy was superior. This wasn't the Great Xia Academy. If the Great Xia Academy had such a genius, no one should try to rope him in, because most of such geniuses would already have a place to go. For example, Wu Lan. She was determined to go to the Great Xia Civilization Academy. There was no need to bother about her. However, Su Yu was different. He had only been famous for a short period of time. Only Bai Feng was staring at him. It was true that Bai Feng was a genius, but Bai Feng was weak. He was in the soaring realm. There were many academies. It was not like Bai Feng was the only one who could do it. A few examiners were wandering around the Su family home with great interest. Although the commander of the Demon Suppression Army didn't say anything, he had been staring at the photo of Su long in the living room. After a while, he muttered to himself, a humble person doesn't forget the danger of the country. When times are tough, an imperial edict will be issued and he will run to the battlefield again. He will be a hero of the human race. The examiners looked at him strangely. That's enough. You're just a boor, what are you pretending for? The old man from the Nine Heavens Academy was the most straightforward. He smiled and said, Su Yu, I've said the conditions before. I guarantee that it's the highest condition of the Great Xia Manor. Everyone, listen to me. Let's talk about each other's strengths and weaknesses. Let's talk about the Great Xia's Civilized Academy. There are many strong people, many monsters, and many geniuses. Su Yu, if you go, even if Bai Feng is there, to be honest, Bai Feng's faction is having a hard time right now. Elder Hong went to the heavenly battlefield, and I don't know how long he'll be back. Bai Feng is currently in charge of their faction. As he spoke, the old man smiled and said, Bai Feng is just floating in the air. To be honest, he doesn't even have the right to speak in the Heart Cultivation Pavilion. What can he fight for you? Fight for the opportunity to enter the mystic realm? Or fight for you to read a few more pieces of the Essay of Will? The Nine Heavens Academy is different. Before he could finish, Huang Xing said indifferently, he went to the Great Xia Civilization Academy. He doesn't have to acknowledge Bai Feng as his teacher. Bai Feng is just an assistant researcher. He is of the highest quality. It won't be a big problem to find a mid to high level researcher to bring him along. On the other side, old Xia from the Dragon Martial Academy chuckled and said, why must he go to the Institute of Civilization? Isn't Zhanjing College a good place? A martial arts genius like Su Yu should go to Zhanjing College. He dared to assist the Wind-Seizing Hall in killing Wan Shi. This kid should be like his father. He should be able to see the truth on the battlefield. Old Xia said seductively, Su Yu went to the Dragon Martial Academy. The first year he studied, the second year he went to the Dragon Martial Guards to become an apprentice. He killed criminals, fought against the myriad races, and explored secret realms. Is this something that the Institute of Civilization can compare to? As soon as he said this, the Great Xia War Academy also said, that's right, a real man. The War Academy is famous. A blade can break mountains and seas, and a sword can cut the heavens. A good man should kill to his heart's content. How can he write and draw at the back? As soon as these words left his mouth, he was finished. Huang Sheng and the others had unkind expressions. On the Nine Heavens Academy's side, the old man narrowed his eyes and smiled, sure, you're so powerful. The army won't need civilization masters next time. The civilization combat camp can be abolished. I'm not talking about those civilized masters in the army. Then are you talking about us? Huang Xing said coldly, ask the thousands of civilized masters in the Great Xia Academy if they agree or not. I can't be bothered with you guys. Stop pestering us. The leader of the Great Xia Academy of War was so embarrassed that he stopped arguing. If he continued talking, these few people would find civilized masters to gang up on him. Everyone looked at Su Yu. Su Yu's face was full of anxiety as he said uneasily, "Teachers. I'm still young after all. I don't know anything and I don't know where to go. According to my thoughts, I want to go anywhere." Su Yu was embarrassed and said uneasily, "But, you all know that I was brought out by Teacher Lu Wenyan. Teacher Lu called me last night and I have to apply for the Great Xia Civilized Academy." Once these words were said, old Xia and the others were furious. What a good Lu Wenyan, shameless old thief. How can you interfere with the students' choices? Su Yu, ignore him. Your father is in the Demon Suppression Army. Ask your father for his opinion. Su Yu said with a bitter face, even if my father is at home, he has to listen to Teacher Lu. He has taught me for 5 years. He is my first teacher in the path of civilization. He has been painstakingly teaching me without asking for anything in return. My father and I cannot be ungrateful. Su Yu sighed, since teacher said that Great Xia's Civilization Academy is good, then I can only go there. I'm sorry, teachers. Everyone was not dissatisfied. Su Yu was still young and had not even gone through the Southern Yuan era. What did he know? It was all because of Lu Wenyan, this old thief. Even if they hated him, they had to hate Lu Wenyan, this shameless old thief. Old Xia said unwillingly, "Su Yu, are you really not going to consider the Dragon Martial Guards? If you go to the Dragon Martial Academy, in a few years, you will be able to join the Dragon Martial Guards and become the most elite military powerhouse in Great Xia." Humph. This time, the commander of the Demon Suppression Army was furious. He said coldly, "Our Demon Suppression Army guards the heavens and is invincible. When did the Dragon Martial Guards become the most elite army?" Chapter 182, First Impressions of Civilization Academy 2. Chapter 182, First Impressions of Civilization Academy 2. Old Xia rolled his eyes and did not say anything. Furthermore, their military was about to start a fight. There was no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. As the two most elite legions of the Great Xia Manor, although the Demon Suppression Army was weaker individually, they had more people and had rich battle experience. They guarded the heavens battlefield all year round, however, they did not admit that the Dragon Martial Guards were number one. Su Yu pretended that he did not hear their argument. As he poured tea for the examiners, he said gratefully, "Thank you, teachers. I'm flattered. I'm really sorry. It has nothing to do with you." Old Xia waved his hand. Following that, he could not bear to lose the opportunity to recruit talents. He said, "You did not ask about the treatment of the Great Xia Civilization University and just agreed?" Su Yu smiled brightly and said, "Teacher Lu said that there's no need to wait for the price to be sold. The Great Xia Civilization Academy is full of experts and has countless resources. It's not to the extent of treating a new student unfairly. If you really want to wait for the price to be sold, after all the teachers have made the conditions and applied for a long time, I rejected it again, wouldn't that be delaying all the teachers?" Everyone couldn't help but laugh. Huang Sheng also laughed. "Instructor Lu is right. The Great Xia Institute of Civilization is a unified standard. They will not treat any genius students lightly. Even if you have been accepted by Baifeng in advance, the result will still be the same. It should be yours. Of course, you can consider whether or not you want to be Baifeng's disciple. You can choose this, but it does not have to be Baifeng." He was very satisfied with Su Yu's choice. He unwaveringly chose the Great Xia Civilization Academy. Although Lu Wenyan seemed to be a part of it, Su Yu didn't hesitate. That was a good thing. He didn't want to waste time and end up blushing with the other examiners. Su Yu had a choice. Although the examiners felt regretful, there was nothing they could do. The old man from Nine Heavens Academy stood up and said, "Su Yu, before you enter the academy, you can choose to come to 9 Heavens Academy. Your treatment will be the same as what I said before. Once you enter the academy, there will be no chance to change it. Old Xia also said, since you have made your choice, we won't waste any time. You came from the military. It's actually the same if you come to the Dragon Martial Guards after you graduate. However, there is one thing that I have to remind you kindly. Old Xia paused, he smiled and said, Civilization Academy isn't like Zhanjing Academy. There are too many old foxes, too many families, and too many noble families. Warriors can continue to cultivate even if they don't have any inheritances. There are many strong warriors on the battlefield, but Civilization Academy, inheritances are more important. There are too many factions, and too many noble families. If you go there, be careful. Huang Xing's expression changed for a moment, but he didn't say anything. Old Xia's words hit the nail on the head. The path of a fighter was relatively pure. There were too many factions in the path of civilization. There was the path of divine literature, the path of pure will, the path of both, and some other messy small factions. There were those who advocated the civilization of the myriad races, and there were those who only recognized the civilization of the human race. There were those who preferred the path of external things, such as putting on a mech to fight, and there were also those who preferred the path of body transformation, for example, transforming a part of their body into a part of the demon race. In short, the path of civilization was very complicated. There were many lunatics in the path of civilization, and there were many strong people. Moreover, each of them had their own unique characteristics. Strictly speaking, although the number of strong people was not as great as the path of the warrior, when it came to actual combat, there was an 80 to 90% chance that a warrior of the same realm would not be a match for a civilized master. The way warriors fought was just like that. The way civilized masters fought was completely different, and one could not fathom it at all. Old Xia only kindly reminded him that Su Yu's background was too ordinary. His father was only a centurion of the demon suppression army. Under the circumstances of the legacy of civilization, there were many civilized master families in the great Xia mansion. It was not uncommon for them to be passed down for hundreds of years. Even some civilized masters from the era of the great Xia king were still alive. In the path of the warrior, there were fewer such clan inheritance imprints. This was because there were people who rose up every year in the path of the warrior. Many new experts rose up from the battlefield, and it was not uncommon for ordinary families. Thank you for your reminder, teacher. Su Yu thanked him but did not say anything. With a civilized master present, it was not appropriate to say anything. As long as you know, then I'll be leaving first. Old Xia felt a little regretful, but he was also straightforward and quickly left. The others did not pester him and left one after another. In the end, only Huang Sheng and a southern origin staff were left in the house. Huang Sheng waited for them to leave, then, he smiled and said, Su Yu, your choice will not be wrong. 99% of the geniuses of the Great Xia Mansion will choose to come to the Great Xia Civilized Academy. Here, the strong compete with each other, and monsters run rampant. There is a group of similarly monstrous geniuses on the main path that will progress along with you. The path of the strong is not lonely. As Huang Xing spoke, he felt a little emotional. Here, you can witness the rise of heroes and the decline of geniuses. A few years later, you will be proud to be classmates with someone, and there is also the possibility that others will be proud to be your classmates and teachers. Among you, some will become the center of light of the myriad races, while others will fall early and turn to dust. The Great Xia Institute of Civilization will witness everything, experience everything, and have everything. Su Yu's heart was slightly warm. Some of his expectations and hot blood surged up, but it quickly calmed down. All of this was too far away. Teacher, since I've already made my choice, I won't regret it. At this moment, Su Yu was no longer simple and honest, he went straight to the point. When will the 20 merit points for the first place in the civilization assessment be distributed? Also, I remember that the first place in the Southern Yuan dynasty still has a 1000 boundary myriad races cultivation technique book. When will it be distributed? Chapter 183, First Impressions of the University of Civilization 3. Chapter 183, First Impressions of the University of Civilization. Su Yu quickly said, also, there should be other benefits for upper-class students, right? There shouldn't be nothing, right? Teacher, can you tell me about it? Huang Xing didn't mind and smiled. Teacher Lu didn't force you to go to the University of Civilization. It was your own decision, right? Yes. Su Yu nodded. I want to go further, so I will naturally choose the Great Xia Civilization Academy. Although 9 Heavens and Tao seeking will give better treatment, these are all short-term benefits. The Great Xia Civilization Academy is long-term. Smart. Huang Xing said with a smile, then let's get straight to the point. The merit points will be sent to you this afternoon, including the rewards from Zhangjin College. The Vitality Liquid merit points will be sent to you soon. As for after entering the school, the upper-class students will definitely have additional benefits. Huang Xing said seriously, after entering the school, the merit points will be awarded 100 points. You will be free to observe an article of will. You will be free to enter the Yuan treasure realm once. You will be free to enter the War treasure realm once. Su Yu knew these two places. Bai Feng had mentioned them. The third and fourth generation prefects had left behind a materialized divine text that formed a small world. These were the two treasure realms. Su Yu thought for a moment and said, then what if there is only a grading system? Then there will only be a 100 merit points reward. Huang Xing smiled and said, upper and middle grades. One more chance to enter the mystic realm, and one more chance to enter the upper grade. Such an opportunity is very rare. As for the mystic realm opportunities given by the 9 Heavens Academy, they are far inferior to ours. Su Yu nodded. This still had the air of the strongest academy. You have 3 chances to enter the mystic realm and 5 chances, but none of them are as good as my 1 chance. The students you evaluated from top to bottom don't even have the chance to enter the mystic realm. If they don't come, they will only have the chance to enter if they are above average. Then these 2 great treasure realms. You will know when you go to the academy. As he said that, Huang Xing said with a slightly serious tone, I suggest that you use the chance to enter the origin word treasure realm after you enter the academy. No, use it when you are at the peak of the 9th level of the origin opening realm. It will be of great help to you in breaking through to the Qianjun realm. The Qianjun body tempering will allow you to break through in the treasure realm, and the benefits will be even greater. Of course, this is usually done by students whose willpower has reached the recuperation stage. They will choose to break through, but it's still too early for you. There might still be a chance in the later stages, so it will be beneficial for you to quickly convert your willpower into battle strength. As for how you choose, it's up to you. Su Yu nodded. Teacher, can I ask another digression? Ask. I heard that the academy is going to open the Myriad Tribe Training Academy this year. Is that true? It's true. Huang Xing nodded and said in a deep voice, this matter has been planned since a long time ago. It was even carried out once before, but it was crippled in the end. The reason for this is rather complicated. The manor head exterminated their clan. It's not that simple. Huang Xing shook his head. What you heard should have been what Instructor Lu told you, but the actual situation is a little more complicated. Of course, you don't need to understand. It's already over. After saying this, Huang Xing continued, this time is different. This time, the Great Xia Manor has also tacitly agreed. Lord Xia Ho has made a huge demand, extorting a large amount of resources from the 10,000 clans. This time, we can't have any more trouble, or else the Great Xia Manor's reputation will be lost. Last time, the Great Xia Manor didn't approve of it. It can be considered as the Academy's private contact. At that time, they still had an excuse. This time, it won't do. What I'm saying to you is that if we encounter the myriad clan students in the academy, we can compete normally. It's not a problem to compete. Even if we have the ability to provoke the other party into a fight to the death, that's allowed. But don't use any methods other than the rules. Huang Xing said. He smiled and said, actually, it doesn't have much to do with you. It's mainly because of those few evildoers. Some people have never suffered a loss before. Once they suffer a loss, their reactions will be very big. In addition, a group of people beside them who aren't clear-headed instigated them. In the end, they'll cause big trouble in private. Su Yu understood. The so-called trouble in private was nothing more than using some special methods, or even assassinations. To the great Xia mansion, this was a loss of credibility. Indeed, it had nothing to do with Su Yu. Even if he really suffered a loss, he could not find a large clan to rely on, and these methods were useless. However, Su Yu recognized the voiceover and said solemnly, students of 10,000 races, are they stronger than monsters? There are definitely some. Huang Xing did not mind and said, it's very normal. After all, some races do not judge the size according to the age of the human race. Some races cultivate for hundreds of years and are considered to be adults. What do you think? Most of the human students are in their teens. There's no way to compare. Some races even start with thousands of tons of stones. What do you think? There are civilized masters among the 10,000 races. You can say that. Of course, they're not called civilized masters. There are all kinds of names, some are called mages, some are called demon masters, and some are called warlocks. Huang Xing smiled and said, civilized masters are just the names of the humans. Even the humans are different. Some civilized masters call themselves divine scribes, some like to call themselves explorers, and some call themselves collectors, modifiers, and destroyers. There are all sorts of names. You don't have to pay too much attention to these. Su Yu nodded again. He vaguely understood that the different names might mean that they were walking on different paths. Then, will there be a conflict between us and the students of the myriad races after we enter the academy? Both sides should restrain themselves and try not to be in the same area. In fact, they shouldn't be assigned to the main area to avoid causing a dispute. Then, what will happen to the academy if a dispute arises? Chapter 184, First Knowledge of Civilization Academy 4. Chapter 184, First Knowledge of Civilization Academy 4. Huang Xing glanced at him and said with a smile, you keep asking this. Are you going to cause trouble for the myriad races? No, I'm just worried that there will be a conflict. Who knows if they will deliberately cause trouble? Don't worry about that. This is the Great Xia Manor. The myriad races paid a huge price to send people here, but they sent idiots here and took the initiative to cause trouble. If you can invite the other party to the life and death arena, you can beat them to death. Huang Xing smiled and said, if you beat them to death and no one collects their corpses, chopping them up to give the myriad clan students more food is also fine. Don't get any ideas just because of the myriad clan training academy. Don't worry, they will be much more low-key than you think. I understand. Su Yu asked about these things in general. In the end, Huang Xing recommended a few researchers to him, asking him to consider changing teachers. Bai Feng's strength was too weak. Huang Xing very sincerely told Su Yu that Bai Feng was extremely irresponsible. Before he left, Huang Xing repeated again, Bai Feng is a genius, and geniuses are very self-centered. They have to spend a lot of time cultivating, exploring secret realms, treasure hunting, and competing. Those who don't have time to teach students, find a mature and prudent teacher. It's better for newbies like you. Bai Feng has many opponents in the academy. Among the younger generation of the academy, Bai Feng is not considered a leader, but he has some conflicts with Xia Yuan and the others. Now that Elder Hong has gone to the celestial battlefield, he might not be able to protect himself. You have to think carefully. Not be able to protect himself. This time, Suyu heard something else and quickly said, "What do you mean by not being able to protect yourself? Can the academy kill people?" "It's not killing people." Huang Sheng hesitated for a moment, however, he still said, "There are some things that are worse than killing people. Removing the treatment of geniuses, lowering their grades, not being able to enter the mystic realm, restricting resources, and removing some important qualifications. Suyu, since you have chosen the civilized academy, you have to know that all of this cannot be avoided. The academy cultivates geniuses and powerhouses. The fittest will be eliminated, and the fittest will survive. If you were to cultivate peacefully, like me, as an ordinary teaching assistant, no one would make things difficult for you. It's not worth their time. But if you want to fight for it, some things are limited." Huang Xing sighed, "For example, the blood of gods and demons. Who wouldn't want to use this to cast their bodies? I would like to, but I don't dare to fight for it, because I definitely won't be able to get it. I can only obediently use the blood of some weak races to cast a body. At this time, no one will pay attention to me. But if I want to fight for it, do you think other people will let you get it easily? The more you give, the more you will gain. The strong will always be strong. It's not that everyone is targeting you, but you don't have the ability. Don't try to snatch something that is beyond your ability. That will only bring trouble to yourself." Huang Sheng spoke very sincerely. As a middle-aged man, even though soaring in the sky might seem impressive to others, Ling Nuan knew very well that if he, Huang Sheng, really had the ability, why would he bother to come to the Southern Yuan as a chief examiner just to earn a little merit? Was it worth it to spend a few days? Bai Feng, Lu Hong, and the others were not people he could compare to. If not for that, why would he have to curry favor with Lu Hong and work for him? They were both flying in the sky, so who would be afraid of whom? More importantly, it wasn't worth it. There was no need for it, and he couldn't afford to provoke them. At this moment, Suyu seemed to have seen the shadows of swords and sabers. The civilized academy wasn't peaceful. No, it was the same for any academy. You don't have the value, so what right do you have to nurture you? Is that by Laoshi very dangerous? It's hard for me to judge. However, since Bai Feng has entered the 7th level of the soaring heaven realm, he probably has other intentions. He will definitely try his best to fight for something that he wouldn't fight for in the past. At that time, his opponents won't be Lu Hong and the others, but another group of people who are stronger than Lu Hong. Lu Hong. Suyu muttered. Huang Xing smiled and said, "You will know Bai Feng's old enemy when you arrive at the academy. However, Bai Feng has recently broken through, and he is still at 6 Dan. You don't have to be too concerned about him." "I understand. Thank you, teacher. You are too polite." Huang Sheng had taken Lu Hong's benefits and caused some trouble for Suyu during the examination. After passing the examination, he naturally had to settle this matter so as to avoid causing trouble later on. Bai Feng wasn't someone he could afford to offend. These people knew how to survive better than geniuses. "Oh right, it's best that nothing else is involved in the battle between you and Wu Lan, let alone think of other ways to deal with her. The Wu family is very strong. Her sister can't even afford to offend Bai Feng." After Huang Xing left, Suyu scratched his head and said after a long while, "Battle?" After thinking for a long time, there was no such thing. I never thought of competing with that idiot. How did Huang Xing know that they were competing? Suyu shook his head. Huang Xing must have misunderstood. Wu Lan, in his eyes, a child who had not grown up was even more foolish than Chen Hao. How could such a person compete with him? It would be too easy for him to teach her a lesson, perhaps with just a few words, this person would go and challenge those evildoers to a duel to the death. I'll just crush them in terms of IQ. Who would dare to do anything to me? Suyu closed the door and muttered. Huang Sheng really underestimated him. I, Su Yu, am not stupid. P.S. La, next Wednesday will be Jiang. I've earned back the investment of my brothers for you. Are you happy? Are you excited? Hurry up and give me a recommendation ticket. Chapter 185, Qianjun Cultivation Method 1. Chapter 185, Qianjun Cultivation Method 1. The evaluation officials of the Department of Strengthening Education and the various universities were very efficient. In the morning, Su Yu and Huang Sheng had reached an agreement. In the afternoon, his harvest this time was sent over. Merit points were directly transferred to Su Yu's merit card. This time, Su Yu had obtained quite a number of merit points. The first place in the evaluation had 10 merit points. The first place on both sides had 20 merit points, and there was an additional 20 merit point subsidy from Huang Sheng. 40 merit points were rewarded. 1,000 Catacombs Realm Cultivation Technique book, along with 3 drops of Vital Qi liquid, was also sent over. As for the Academy's rewards, they would only be available after Su Yu entered the Academy. This was very normal, in case Su Yu decided not to study at the Great Xia Civilization Academy and went to another academy. The Academy was not stupid and would not do such a thing. Merit points were not easy to calculate with money. The official price was not expensive, but they could not be bought or traded. The black market price was not cheap, but it was also prone to accidents. According to the value of blood essence, that 1 point was about 30,000. According to the price of vitality liquid, it was about 20,000. In short, in this assessment, Su Yu earned over 1 million by taking the first place. This also helped Su Yu, who had almost gone bankrupt previously, to solve his urgent problem. At that moment, Su Yu was once again more well off. Adding the remaining 2 merit points, he had 42 merit points and 3 drops of vitality liquid. There were 2 books from the myriad clans, and 2 pieces of the Essay of Will. In fact, Bai Feng's essay was about to turn into ordinary characters. After all, it was written casually by Bai Feng and not carved with blood essence. The time it was preserved was even shorter than the time it was carved with blood essence. In more than 2 months, this origin opening technique was no longer as mystical as before. Fortunately, after Su Yu reached 9th level of the origin opening realm, there was not much demand for it. Apart from these, there were also weapons and several books of ordinary cultivation techniques. As for cash, it was less than 30,000. His blood essence had already been completely exhausted, including the 2 drops of blood essence that he had absorbed for his blood lackey. Sigh. Su Yu, who had received the reward, still felt a little regretful. If it wasn't for Zhou Tianqi and the others, he would still have 20 more merit points. Moreover, Division Head Sun and the others had refused to compensate him for the merit points, making Su Yu feel that he had suffered a heavy loss this time. Otherwise, his merit points would probably break through 100 points this time, breaking the record. It was comparable to the merit points obtained by killing a person who had soared into the sky. After sighing for a while, Su Yu no longer felt conflicted. August 1st, the new students from the various universities would enter the academy. There was still more than a month before they would enter the academy. During this month, Su Yu needed to make some plans. The current him was already at the 9th level of the origin opening realm, and his willpower had been fully accumulated by 20%. What he needed to do next was to reach the 1000 June realm as soon as possible and raise his willpower. The 1000 June realm, when the 9th level of the origin awakening realm breaks through to the 1000 June realm, what I need to do is to continue to open my aperture and open the 1000 June aperture. But before that, I have to choose a 1000 June realm cultivation method that suits me. There were many 1000 June realm cultivation methods, and they were all different. In general, one could judge their strength by how many apertures they had opened. For example, Su Yu had a copy of the. He had opened 72 apertures. This was an aperture other than the 9 apertures of the Yuan opening realm, and it was a top-tier mystic rank cultivation technique. In addition, he also knew that was passed down from the military. He had opened 36 apertures, and it was a top-tier yellow rank cultivation technique. The 1000 June cultivation technique that one cultivated was different. At the 9th level of the Yuan opening realm, the apertures that needed to be opened were also different, and the advancement was also different. 9 openings were the first grade, and 36 openings were the first grade. Opening 36 openings was the top grade of the yellow grade, opening 72 openings was the top grade of the black grade, and if one could open 108 openings, it would be the top grade of the earth grade. In other words, a low-grade yellow grade technique might only need to open 9 openings to complete the cultivation of the Qianjun realm. Then, at the Yuan opening realm, one might be able to cultivate another opening to enter the Qianjun realm. However, this 1000 June was too weak. Under normal circumstances, unless it was really not suitable for cultivation, humans would mainly focus on the 1000 June technique and open 36 apertures to cultivate. This also meant that at the 9th level of the Yuan opening realm, one needed to open 4 more apertures to officially step into the 1000 June realm. What cultivation technique should I cultivate? At this moment, it was time for Su Yu to make his choice. He had basically opened all 9 apertures. The next choice would affect the entire Qianjun stage, or even the later stages of cultivation. I definitely can't cultivate the Yishan art. This thing is taught by the myriad clans. If I cultivate it, I might be mistaken as a member of the myriad clans. Then, I can only cultivate the Qianjun art. Su Yu was still young, so he was somewhat unwilling. Opening 36 apertures was too little. It was said that many top-tier experts cultivated yellow or black rank cultivation techniques, but back then, the environment didn't allow it. At this time, if the cultivation technique cultivated was too weak, then the combat strength would be weak. The military side had no choice. After all, the qualifications of those who joined the army were different, and if the cultivation technique was too profound, they might not be able to learn it. The Qianjun secret art was very common, and naturally, this was the main reason. However, if Su Yu also learned the 1000 June technique, then his battle strength at the 1000 June stage would be very weak. Of course, as a reserve civilized master, Su Yu actually didn't need to care too much. When he reached the soaring stage, he had a chance to once again cast his body. At that time, if he switched to cultivating a powerful cultivation method, then it was also possible. However, Su Yu didn't want to fall behind in the 1000 June stage. His willpower was inferior to those freaks. If he was also inferior to them in the path of the fighters, then he wouldn't be able to compete with them. I have to first decide on a cultivation method. No matter what, I have to get a mystic rank cultivation method to cultivate. Su Yu made a decision in his heart. At this moment, he was not in a hurry to cultivate. He had just broken through to the 9 apertures of the Origin Awakening realm, so he still needed to consolidate it. Chapter 186, Qianjun Cultivation Technique 2. Chapter 186, Qianjun Cultivation Technique 2. On the side of Nanyuan, the only person who could give Su Yu advice was probably Lu Wenyan. As for Bai Feng, that cheap teacher, Su Yu didn't even know what was going on with him. Besides, even if he wanted to contact him, he was unable to do so. Unless he asked Lu Wenyan, Su Yu wouldn't ask him. Rushing wasn't a business. 27th. Nanyuan Academy. The 2-day assessment had ended. The academy had a month off. At this moment, the academy was extremely quiet. At the end of June, the weather began to heat up. Su Yu wore a shirt and walked on the avenue of the academy. There was no one around, so it was rare for it to be quiet. The results of the students would all be released on July 1st. Starting from July 2nd, the students would fill in the names of the academies they wanted to apply for. All of them would end on July 5th, and the various universities would complete their enrollment plans before July 10th. Around the 15th of July, the students would be able to get the report documents. With the report documents, they could go to all the colleges to register. The Great Xia Mansion's efficiency was quite fast. The entire Great Xia Mansion had a lot of students to refer to, unlike a small place like Nanyuan, where there were only a few thousand examinees. Nanyuan was too small. In the few large cities next door, there were more than 30,000 examinees, which was close to 10 times that of Nanyuan. There were even more students in the Great Xia Mansion, which had more than 100,000 students. In the entire Great Xia Mansion, there were around 800,000 students. There were many people, but of course, there were also many schools. There were not many people in Nanyuan who could get into Zhanjing College and Civilization College. Moreover, most of them were ordinary Civilization or Zhanjing College. There were not many people who could get into the Great Xia War and Civilization College. It was not time for the results to be released yet, so there was no one in the college. Su Yu did not mind. Since he had already decided, he just needed to report to the college. He walked and stopped, and soon, he arrived at Lu Wenyan's house. He knocked on the door and it opened. Lu Wenyan was currently cooking in the kitchen. When Su Yu saw this, he rushed in and said, "Teacher, let me help you. Are you here to freeload?" Lu Wenyan did not even turn his head. His laughter could be heard. "You're rushing over during mealtimes. You've learned to be opportunistic." Su Yu was embarrassed and explained, "No, teacher. I'm just afraid that you'll wake up late when you're on vacation." "Nonsense." Lu Wenyan scolded with a laugh and said, "Help me wash the vegetables. During the time your father was away, you probably didn't eat much. A single man needs to learn how to cook so that he won't spoil himself." Su Yu scratched his head and laughed dryly without replying. After entering the kitchen, he started to help Lu Wenyan wash the vegetables and choose the vegetables. While cooking, Lu Wenyan asked, "Are you having doubts by coming to my place?" "No, I just want to pick a 1,000-June cultivation technique and ask for teacher's advice." 1,000-June cultivation technique. Once these words were said, Lu Wenyan was slightly stunned. After a long while, he said, "If you didn't say it, I would have forgotten that you're actually at the 9th level of the awakening realm." How fast! He was really about to forget. Su Yu's progress in the path of the fighter was too fast, much faster than his willpower. If not for the existence of the divine runes, Su Yu's talent in the path of a civilized master would be far inferior to the path of the fighter. Lu Wenyan sighed, he sighed again and said, "I told you not to use your blood essence to cultivate, but you didn't listen. Did that blood divine runes have some other characteristics that you didn't tell me? For example, if you absorb the blood essence, it could transmit some vital qi to you." Su Yu looked conflicted and fell silent again. He had exchanged for a lot of blood essence, so Lu Wenyan must have known about it. Su Yu had improved so quickly, and there was also the smell of blood essence on his body. Ordinary people could not sense it, but Lu Wenyan could still sense it. Obviously, he was also guessing if it was because of the blood character. Before sketching the blood character, Su Yu had also exchanged for blood essence, but the amount was very small. Moreover, he had used the excuse of researching to exchange for it. But later on, he had exchanged for a lot, and almost all of his merit points had been spent on it. It would be strange if Lu Wenyan did not know about such a large amount of exchange. There are some characteristics of the divine texts that assist in the cultivation of the physical body. This isn't considered as an external path. Seeing that he did not speak, Lu Wenyan did not mind, he said to himself, "But you can't rely too much on the divine texts. This is the time for you to understand your own body. In the end, you chose to rely on the divine texts when you were in the Yuan opening stage. Then, once you're in the air, you'll be in big trouble. You won't be able to clearly understand your body, and you won't be able to control it. Your body will also be a problem." Su Yu hurriedly asked, "Teacher, will the assistance of the divine runes ruin your future?" "That won't be necessary." Lu Wenyan sighed. "But you don't know much about your body and you won't be able to clearly understand it. Once you are in the air, your progress will be very slow because you lack some of the previous insights. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it had nothing to do with him. It wasn't like he was really relying on the divine runes. He was just borrowing the characteristics of the Atlas to absorb Yuan Qi in advance. He was still confident in his control over his body. Otherwise, he would not have been able to cultivate the Thunder Essence Blade. Lu Wenyan did not say anything else. If it were him, with such a divine text, would he be able to resist the temptation? Absorbing blood essence, feedback Yuan Qi, and helping with cultivation was probably something that many people dreamed of. This was especially so for civilized masters. They mainly cultivated willpower, and they also had to cultivate the body, which was very time-consuming. If the divine text could assist in cultivation, many people would choose to do so. Since Su Yu mainly walked the path of civilized masters, Lu Wenyan thought about it and didn't have to worry too much about this. Thinking about this, Lu Wenyan returned to the main topic and said, there are a lot of cultivation techniques in the Thousand Mass realm. You can go to any shop that sells cultivation techniques and they will be able to recommend over 100 kinds to you. However, in terms of popularity, the Thousand Mass technique is the most widespread and the cultivation difficulty is moderate. It is very suitable for ordinary people.